Good evening and welcome to the December 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to invite Vivian and Ella Karen to come lead us in the pledge. Come to the podium if everyone could please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent job. Excellent job. Next item on our agenda is reflection. I would like to first off wish everyone happy holidays and hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda, I believe, not to spoil it, but I believe it's going to be deferred. I will leave it up to the council. It was to be the election of a council vice president, but one of our council members is not here.
Mr. Mayor, I propose we defer this to the next regular council meeting.
Second.
Do we need a motion for that, Lynn? Or can we just do it?
You can just do it.
Okay, we'll just put it on the next agenda.
It's reasonable.
Okay. Next, we have approval of minutes, and tonight we have one set of minutes to approve from Monday, August 19th. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the regular session of the Mayor and Council from Monday, August 19th, 2019.
Second.
All those?
Mr. Mayor, I have one minor technical correction,
Sure.
if I may.
Sure.
Under the from the Mayor and City Council, under my comments, item number 5 indicates that I mentioned that I attended the Maryland Association of Counties Winter Conference. That actually should say Summer Conference.
Doris, did you catch that? Okay. Who made the motion?
I did.
Neil, do you accept the amendment?
I
friendly
accept the
amendment?
amendment, yeah. I
Okay.
think that's reasonable.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, we're going to move on to presentations, and I would like to invite Mark Soroka, our Chief of Police, to join me at the podium. Just in case. I'm going to read the background.
Okay. Good evening. A career as a police officer is more than a job. It is a calling to a life of sincerity, service, and sacrifice. To become a successful police officer, one must possess a true desire to help others, no matter what the cost. Nowhere is that desire more evident than within the ranks of the Gaithersburg Police Department. I want to thank the families and friends of the officers being recognized tonight for your support that has enabled them to advance in their careers. They did not get here alone, as you are the ones that have been there for them in the good times as well as the bad. You've shown patience and understanding when they miss family events as a result of having to work, and they will need your continued support now that they've attained positions of greater responsibility. The Gaithersburg Police Department was established in 1963 and has been serving this community around the clock, year in and year out, ever since. Throughout that history, the Gaithersburg Police have been serving the citizens and the current population of more than 70,000 people in our city. Over all of those years, only a few hundred people have been afforded the opportunity to serve as Gaithersburg police officers, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for establishing the department that we proudly serve today in 2019. But an even smaller group of people over all of those years have earned the privilege to lead Gaithersburg police officers. Those individuals sought and attained promotion as a product of their work, their dedication, their conduct, and their unwavering commitment to service, not just to the community, but also to those who serve alongside them. And I am privileged tonight to acknowledge a new generation of leaders joining that group that has an additional privilege to serve in that leadership capacity. Leadership is a most difficult calling, and maybe even more so today than ever before throughout our history. Corporal Milano, Sergeant Karen, and Lieutenant Campbell, understand that those that you have within your charge are imperfect people. You also are imperfect people. They will make mistakes. In fact, they will try valiantly and fail, but they will also exceed beyond your expectations, and they will demonstrate commitment and sacrifice that you cannot anticipate. And as you undertake your new responsibilities, I encourage you to pause and deliberately observe those that serve with and for you. Caution them in those moments where you see them leading themselves to a poor conclusion, and always acknowledge them when you see them doing things that are not simply ordinary, but in every way extraordinary. And that's a difficult bar to reach in a profession that's under such intense scrutiny, and in a profession that demands extraordinary sacrifice. Some will say it's simply the job description, but never let an opportunity to acknowledge that sacrifice pass, and never do anything or take anything from them that you have not genuinely earned as their leader. Their promotional accomplishment and achievement stands on its own merits. I'm proud tonight to introduce our new leaders that must remember that the distinctive characteristic of a truly successful supervisor and commander is that they leave every assignment in which they have ever held better than it was when they arrived. I will now call the name of each officer and a family member pinning the badge. When I call your name, please come forward. Promoted to the rank of Corporal Evan Milano, and pinning on his badge is his commander, Lieutenant Chris Vance.
Let's give him a round of applause.
Okay, the next promotion is the rank of Sergeant, Wade Caron, and pinning on his badge is his wife, Emily. Yeah, Ella's here too. His daughter Ella's up here too. Come on, Ella. Okay. How's she gonna do it this time? They changed it. His daughter's gonna do the pinning, not his wife. Somebody gave me bad information again back there. All right, and promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Ray Campbell, and pinning his badge is his wife, Kelley. All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Don't be too hard on them up there.
That was a treat. You don't usually hear the chief give a speech like that. That was quite amazing. Give him another round of applause. Okay, next presentation is the Kentlands Lakelands 5K race proceeds, and I'd like to invite Michelle Potter, Director of Parks, Rec, and Culture, Carolyn Ryan, our Acting Director of Parks, Rec, and Culture, Rob Garrettson, Chair of the Kentlands Community Foundation, Elizabeth Monaco, Executive Director of the Kentlands Community Foundation, Danny Talmadge, Race Director, and Noah Wooldridge, our student artist. Everyone, please come on up. I know. Keep going. Keep going. Thanks for being here. Hey, good job. Please.
Very good. The 2019 Kentlands Lakelands 5K was held on Saturday, August 31st, with over 1,100 participants, plus over 160 children participating in the kids' runs. The event, which is hosted by the Kentlands Community Foundation in partnership with the City of Gaithersburg, raises funds, promotes volunteerism, and showcases the benefits of new urbanism and walkable communities. Nicholas Cruzier of Darnestown was the top male finisher, coming in at 16 minutes and 2 seconds, and is with us here this evening. The top female finisher was Darcy Strauss of Frederick, Maryland, who finished in 20 minutes, 30 seconds. A t-shirt design contest is held in conjunction with this event, and Noah Wooldridge, a fifth grader at Rachel Carson Elementary School, created the winning design, which was then printed on the kids' run shirts. You can see right here. Very nice. This event benefits several local charities, including the Dwelling Place, Maryland Senior Olympics, and Mercy Health Clinic, in addition to the City of Gaithersburg for the Dolores C. Swoyer Scholarship Fund and to use toward art classes at the Arts Barn. This year's check to the Dolores Swoyer Scholarship Fund will enable even more children to attend the city's summer camp program. Including this year's donation, the foundation has donated over $177,000 over the past 17 years. We thank the Kentlands Community Foundation for their ongoing support.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Council, for hearing us. We're so glad to be here yet again to present a check to the City of Gaithersburg for these worthy camps. In addition, this is the first year that the foundation is giving $1,500 to the Arts Barn camps so that children who otherwise would not be able to attend these wonderful camps could in fact attend. And this is because of the tremendous support that this race receives from the business community and from the runners. One thing that Carolyn didn't say is that Nick has won this race, how many times, Nick? Three? 3 times. And actually this year I got to run the Pacer car and he was right behind me the whole way. And it's because of the support of the runners and of the businesses that we're able to make these wonderful checks. And we hope that the success of these races continue to grow, and therefore our donation will be able to continue to grow. Thank you very much.
Just a quick note before we go to the Forest Oak Cemetery presentation that that Dolores Swoyer Scholarship Foundation really does excellent work in the city of Gaithersburg. My kids, and I know there's a lot of people in this room whose kids attended city camps or took part in recreation programs, and there is some need in this community, and that scholarship goes entirely to fund kids who are in need to become part of our program. So it's a big deal. Next, we are going to move on. Is Jim Clifford? I haven't seen Jim. Is Jim here? We had Frank Cornelius from the Forest Oak Cemetery Board here, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Come on up. Yeah, that's just fine.
You gotta excuse my voice, I have a terrible cold. But Jimmy is still celebrating his 40th wedding anniversary, so he's unable to attend this evening. But we, the board from Forest Oak Cemetery, want to express our sincere thanks and gratitude for what the city of Gaithersburg has done and what the council has done in constructing the wall, the fence in a most beautiful fashion. I was there during the period of construction several times, excuse me, and I really couldn't believe the work that went into it, the construction. I thought they were building a high-rise building. The depth of the foundation and the work that went in underground to support the post and the railings, and of course to reinstall the archway going into there. But we really appreciate it. We could not have done that. We, the board, could not have done that. We have sold out all of our plots long ago. Excuse me, as the sign says. The cemetery was started in 1855, and it's limited in size because we're engulfed by buildings all around. So without, you know, the wonderful contribution of the city and the council, we would not have been able to improve that fence, which had been hit numerous times by vehicles, and it was pretty ragged, having withstood time from 1855 to for the majority of the fence. But anyhow, one additional thing is that there are, on either side of the post holding up the entrance, there is a recessed area. Two of those recessed areas are occupied by the date and the address of the cemetery, but there are two that are vacant. And we, the board, though, would like from the council some indication from you, not now, but in the future, of some dedicated statement that we would like to contribute to one of those two areas. The areas are 12 by 18, I think, I measured the other day. And we would like to do that just as a continual reminder of the gratitude that we have for what has been done for the cemetery. And I've had numerous people come to me and ask or tell me, y'all did a great job, you know, and I said, no, we didn't do anything. We just approved it, and we stood by and watched it develop. So a lot of people have noticed, and a lot of people will notice for the years to come too, because that structure will be there. Thank you very much again. And sometime or other, either Jimmy or I will be in touch with you with regard to some wording for that plaque that we would like to install there on one side or the other. Very well.
Thank you for taking the time to come up here and say that. We've gotten a lot of positive comments about that too. It was for those of you who don't know, we're talking about the cemetery that's on 355. How do I just like across from where the FedEx is and you know, that area. And it's just like a small part of an overall, you know, effort to improve 355 and the view people have of our city as they come through it. And we're delighted about how it came out too, and appreciate your partnership and thank you for the offer to have something engraved there. It's really nice.
I think the city deserves some obvious recognition in a space that's already there and available, and we would like to do that if at all possible. But thank you again. And the one other thing I would mention is that in walking through the cemetery, the names that are engraved on those headstones are some of the founding fathers of the city, and important people. I had a list of people I was going to mention, but then again, that wouldn't necessarily pay tribute to those who are not going to be mentioned. But it is really a sounding board. It's a soundtrack for the history of Gaithersburg, just to read and to recall some of those. I was born not too far from here, and I know a lot of the people that have passed away and are interred there, including our parents. So we appreciate everything you've done. And I'm sorry for my voice. It's just fading, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not at all. Any comments from the council?
Well, I think it's important that we preserve, part of the history of Gaithersburg. It's there, right there on 355, and we don't have the big tree anymore, but we have that cemetery where certainly a lot of notables that are important to the history of the city are buried. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on our agenda is Kelley Park. We have MCPS, Seth Adams, Seth Ferriano here to present, and Tony has you on the call to podium list as well.
But you skipped my part. So Seth is,
Oh, did I skip?
No, it's okay. I was just going to introduce the two.
Oh, okay.
Seth Ferriano and Seth Adams. The PowerPoint and I believe a short video is queued up on screen.
What I'm hoping we'll do here is you guys will give the presentation. We'll have a little bit of maybe some questions from the council or comments. And then, if you don't mind, right after this, we do have public comments. And I'm positive we're going to have some comments on the project and relevant, and maybe you guys will want to hear them and respond to anything you choose to respond to.
Sure, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to return and present essentially our preliminary plans presentation.
Let me just also say, we do have a rule about signs. If you want to hold it up, stand in the back of the room. You're allowed to hold them up, you just can't block anybody's view. So please go ahead, sorry.
So again, thank you again for the opportunity. Just to give a little bit of recap, so our Board of Education just recently approved, as of last week, a $1.818 billion capital improvements program request to move through the council. Within that CIP request, there's two new schools within the city of Gaithersburg. One is the Gaithersburg number 8 elementary school, and then the second is the Crown High School. So we're very excited. The elementary school has a proposed completion date of 2022. The high school with a completion date of 2025. So hope this is the first of many conversations with mayor and council about these really exciting projects that are happening within the city, and hope to continue to update you on progress of both. So again, here tonight we're going to present the preliminary plans for the Gaithersburg Elementary School number 8 project. This project was before the Board of Education on October 28th for review, and they unanimously approved the project. So tonight we're here also to provide an update, obviously show you the preliminary plans, show you the site design, show you the building design, and really start to hopefully answer any questions that you may have about the process around where we are today, is also where we're going tomorrow. I would say also very important aspect of this project was within the CIP request for the Board of Education was a significant increase in budget for this particular project. So the board unanimously approved a recommendation of $13 million increase to bring the total to a $39 million project. So we're very excited that that will allow us to really build a state-of-the-art 21st century educational facility. So here again with me tonight is the architect for the project and the project manager for MCPS. Ron will walk us through the building design, and obviously at the end we'll be open to any questions that you may have. So with that, Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Will you advance for me? Sure. Or do you want me to? I can't reach it. So next slide. So here we have the north end of the Kelley Park site with baseball field up in C, a stream bed on the right side of the screen. We have the existing environmental setbacks and for both the wetlands and the floodplain that have to be accommodated on the site. And to the bottom of the image is the Victory Farm Drive, the street frontage of the site. Next slide, please. With that, there is the site plan, which was developed through that collaborative committee process we shared with you last time. Variety of options were evaluated, where the building should go, what the building massing should look like, and how it should develop on the site, resulting in this, I would call it a V-shaped site, in which the building hugs the right side of the site up against the environmental setbacks, keeping out of those critical zones. To the left side are all the public outdoor amenities. Those are the soccer field, the softball field, all the outdoor play areas for both the school and the community. And I might add, identified by number 10 and 11 there, are the tot lot area that we discussed the last time we were here. That tot lot is somewhat elevated from the school playground, so that is a distinct definition of space between that tot lot and the school play area, so that it could be separated and used during the daytime by the community residents. And associated with that, number 11 identifies independent parking area that is specifically for that tot lot. I also want to point out, as we're looking at the plan of the building from the aerial and the site plan, that the left side of the one area, the building area, is kind of the public areas of the building, which I'll show you as we get into the plan, versus the more private educational instructional areas of the building, which are on the right side of the plan. So the plan itself will be bifurcated at kind of public, private, noisy, quiet areas as well. Next slide, please. Moving into the floor plan itself, as I described this V-shaped arrangement, we have a main entrance from the front that can be accessed both daytime and nighttime if it's open for a public activity, as well as a community use entrance on the left side, which opens right to those outdoor play areas and play fields, which can be used for the gymnasium. That gymnasium can be separated for its own use as itself, or other public functions. For example, the cafetorium, the media center, the linkages to learning program, the admin, are all located to the left side of the site, kind of separating a public versus private zone. Whereas to the right is a 3-story instructional bar. So it's a very clean distinction between that, and that can be closed off for evening use for security purposes, so that the whole left of the building can essentially run as a community center for community use in the evening. Next slide. Moving up the building as we go to the second floor and then the third floor above it, they follow a very simple linear diagram, which was developed as a result of some of our discussions with teachers and administrators in the Gaithersburg cluster on the way they want to arrange the school, the way they want to have collaboration areas outside of the classroom, and the way that instruction is best provided here in the Gaithersburg cluster specifically. All of the lower age children will be on the first floor so that they have immediate access to egress in the event of a fire, and 3 stairs have been provided to provide egress from the top 2 levels downstairs in a very clean and quick way. The third floor follows the same diagram of a linear plan with the 3 stairs going to the top. Next slide, please. The elevations face the bottom elevation, the northeast elevation, essentially stacks a 1-story facade to the public park side, keeping that area low, while setting the 3-story piece out on Victory Farm. So the more urban, dense piece faces out to the street, while the lower density, shorter piece faces towards the public park area. Next slide, please. The back area also takes advantage of some of the natural features for instruction. So this 1-story bar on the bottom right corner of the slide demonstrates the art, the media center, the music area. So those kids, for those artistic functions, and those have an opportunity to use outdoor learning environments for their education as well, and take advantage of that beautiful stream bed and tree line behind the school. Next slide. Here we have an image of the linkages to learning, the front entry. The administration is shaped such, taking advantage of that V shape to give full 180-degree view of anyone who's coming towards the front door. And they'll be coming in through a secure vestibule. So not only will the administration be able to control who enters the building, they'll see who comes to the building before they actually get to the front door as well, directly outside. And here around the bus loop is the piece that faces towards Victory Farm. Next slide, please. Coming around to the playfield side, you can see here how the lower facade faces the park area, so trying to break the scale of the building down. And we see here the gymnasium entry and the play areas directly adjacent to the public functions of the building. Next slide, please. And then coming around to the back of the building, here are those, there's a kindergarten play area and those artistic functions offering opportunity for students to have outdoor learning environments directly adjacent to those specialized program classrooms. If you want to go through the slides too. That's on the bottom right corner. And just for fun, we have a fly-around opportunity to really understand the building. We see here the front entry directly off the bus loop, the massive 3-story facade facing Victoria Farm Drive, where it's separated from the park area, the lower areas. As we come around, this is one of those fire stairs. And once we get to the back of the building, we see how the kindergarten and pre-K early childhood areas can open up directly to their separate playground areas that serve those functions. And here we have those glass areas that are the art, the music, the media center, offering direct access to the outside for those learning opportunities. Coming around to the back of the building, we see the gymnasium. Try to have some opportunities to bring some natural light into that as well through Claire's story. And that, of course, opens directly out to the outdoor play functions, the paved play areas. This is the cafeteria adjacent the gymnasium, and coming around back to the front, the linkages to learning, which is also a public function that serves the community, back around to the front door.
So in terms of another piece to the board's actions last week were around the boundary study. I know that was certainly a question regarding the overall scope of the study. The board also unanimously passed an accelerated boundary study process for this project. So we are approved to start this coming spring, 2020, which is about 30 months before the school opening, which is a little bit of an anomaly, but I think it certainly, based on the advocacy of both mayor and council as well as our board, felt very strongly about this. The scope will include all elementary schools within the Gaithersburg cluster, as well as the 2 middle schools. So again, from a scope perspective, it will include the articulation of all elementary schools and middle school. In terms of site and opportunities for conveyance, I think one of the elements that we would like to discuss with mayor and council for your consideration is conversations, negotiations with the city manager. When we look at this particular site, I think we look at it very similar to other shared school park sites. We look at this building layout. We look at a footprint that does not include the soccer field, but just looking at the building itself and the parking lot, very similar to Lakelands Park. It's about a 5-acre parcel of land that we would be looking at from a conveyance perspective. Obviously the fields, the tot lot, the access paths, the environmental features, certainly we would strongly recommend that all stay within the purview of the city ownership, very similar to like a Lakelands Park scenario. We have 63 of these shared sites in existence right now, and we are very successful in those partnerships, and we would fully expect to see another successful partnership with the city moving forward on this project. So that is our presentation. That is our update on the project. I would close and add from a perspective of an overall school system. This year we grew again by enrollment. We grew by 2,700 students, and that's significant. We've had that type of growth for the last 10 years, about 25,000 students. So these capacity projects, these new schools are very important to the school system, they're very important to our communities. Just to put that in context, 2,700 students could fill a little over 3.5 elementary schools to full-size capacity. So this is not small growth that we're seeing. It's growth that, obviously these are critical projects for us as a school system, and again, we feel that the partnerships with the mayor and council, with the community, and the families that are in Gaithersburg can certainly be strengthened as we continue down the road with this project.
Thank you, Seth. Before I comment on the specifics of this preliminary plan, let me just take us back to part of the conversation you're well aware of, that in some of the back and forth with the council over the couple of years we've been discussing this, you guys looked at Victory Farm Park site, which is adjacent to Forest Oak Middle School. What were your findings there?
So we looked at multiple areas of Victory Farm Park, including a portion of the middle school site, to look for development opportunities. Realistically, of the 4 different areas that we looked at within Victory Farm and the school site, there was one that seemed to be more viable than the others. It is the site that's directly across the street from the middle school. But I think as we continued those reviews, the siting of a school, it was very apparent that the fully wooded lot certainly would have to be clear cut. There would have to be significant retaining walls, and quite honestly, we would not be able to accommodate much of anything from an outdoor play space perspective. So I think when you look at Victory Farm Park and the middle school site, the topography, the environmental features, some of the significant constraints around those really deem those areas not, you can never say not buildable, but they're certainly, it's not what we would consider feasible to construct an elementary school.
There was some issue with the topography as well?
Yes, that entire area does have significant topography. So there are areas that would see retaining walls of up to 20 to 30 feet in height, just to be able to get some form of a level ground. When we looked at the middle school site to see if we could site a elementary school on the middle school site, it was really apparent that the transition from that site to the nearest roadway was going to result in significant infrastructure around potential bridges and other forms of filling the earth. Again, when you start to look at those types of activities, it's deemed infeasible at that point.
Okay. Well, commenting on the specific plan, I want to, I think it looks great. Frankly, I think it looks great. I think what the initial goal here, based on our feedback and based on public feedback, was if we were going to do this, we wanted to minimize the footprint of the school, which is done. It sort of hugs that right side. We wanted to maximize the continued public use of Kelley Park, and what I see essentially is we're losing a baseball field and tennis courts. We have 2 other baseball fields, and we're gaining a soccer field could potentially have artificial turf, which could be programmed year-round, which would be an enhancement and certainly serve the community in a way that they haven't been served by Kelley Park. So that's an enhancement. The tot lot, which is usable even during school hours, appreciate that. That's not. We had that in the last presentation you guys came and gave, and I think it's an important part. There could be additional parking spaces, not during school hours, that can be used by the public. I think there's, as I've said before, I think there's the possibility, depending on how the boundary study goes, if MCPS does go forward and maximize walkers, it actually could be a reduction in traffic in the area, because currently every student in that area, there's students in that area, they all have to be bused. And if most of them could walk at this point, and it's very walkable from a lot of different spots, then it could actually have a positive impact. So I think you guys have really taken our comments and applied them in a smart way here, and I'm curious to see what the council thinks. Who wants to go first? Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Seth. And sorry, I forgot your. It's fine. Ron.
Yes, thank you.
The Seth's easy to remember.
Yeah.
And so thank you for coming out and presenting this. And I agree with the mayor that what you presented here is a very attractive school site. The problem with that is kind of what the initial concern that I raised way back when was It's a very attractive school site, but it now makes the park site subservient to the school site. So you've got a very nice school. Driving by, it looks like a very nice school. And I understand why MCPS would want this site, because it does make a very nice school site. Unfortunately, sitting here in the city council, it's an extraordinary request for the city to be asked to provide property to help MCPS perform its function. But we are very supportive of both BOE's and MCPS's role in educating our students, and it's a very important role here. But I just want you to appreciate the kind of balanced approach that we have to take here, and not only looking at the best interests of our children, to our students, but also balancing with green space and park space and utilization. And so I still see here kind of a good-looking site, but it's a park that's subservient to the school. And kind of, let me just lay out the roadmap for my comments, because they're probably going to be lengthy here. I had kind of 3 trains of thought, and Seth, we've talked about this before. One is if I'm going to support a school site here at one of our banner parks, that we have to look at all options and make sure that it is the option that needs to be chosen, and not the option of convenience. 2 is that I want to make sure that city students are attending, and I appreciate the BOE's role in accelerating the boundary studies, but I want to look at options for how we can assure that city students will be attending the school, particularly if we're going to be giving up a park in order to partner with MCPS here. And the 3rd is, I guess, the devil's in the details of the acquisition agreement, which I don't think we've talked about. Maybe that's a little further down the line, so we can talk about that. But I do want to go back to kind of where Judd was talking about Victory Farm Park, because we did have substantial communications on this. In fact, we had a meeting. It was a very good conversation where I asked you to take a look at a co-location with Forest Oak Middle School, and we would look to convey portions of Victory Farm Park to accommodate that site. And so particularly the area that I looked at when we were discussing it is this soccer field that's behind Forest Oak Middle School. There's also a buildable area in Victory Farm Park that if it's necessary, we could talk about conveying that. In the discussions that we had there, you intimated that the part that renders that infeasible is not the environmental. The part that renders that infeasible is not buildable area. It's flat. There's no trees there. It is I guess in your estimation, the requirement that there be a bridge from Mid-County Highway to Forest Oak Middle School. And so that's kind of where I'd like to begin the conversation going forward, recognizing again that I'm just one vote on this council. And I'd love to see your traffic studies. I'd like to see the analysis that leads to that conclusion. Because when you discuss Victory Farm Park Site 3, the green area right below the school, you didn't mention the need for additional infrastructure to transport students into that site. And so I don't know if that's neither here nor there, but I'm kind of curious as to why there would need to be additional infrastructure to get kids around the site at Forest Oak Middle School to the back school, the elementary school, if it's sited in the back area, and it wouldn't be necessary in the front. And I don't know if that's just a conversation we have to have offline, so I'm just making the request now that if you have the data that would show that that area is not feasible, because again, it's not encumbered by environmental, it's not encumbered by retaining walls. There's no trees there. I would like to see that. Particularly, I'd like the staff to take a look at it, and because I will agree with you, if that's necessary for the site, that we have to build a infrastructure from Mid-County Highway onto Forest Oak Middle School to accommodate a new elementary school there, that's cost prohibitive. It's going to become infeasible simply because of the cost of the infrastructure. So that is my request to you going forward. Boundary study, is there any way, I mean, again, my interest is making sure that if we're taking this extraordinary action of conveying city parkland, one of our crown jewel parks, to accommodate a school site, that our students go there. Now, I appreciate the Board of Education accelerating the boundary study, but it doesn't sound to me that that boundary study is going to be completed before conveyance is necessary, because you're going to need conveyance to begin construction, but I would assume. I mean, cart before the horse type thing. Is that correct, or?
So you are correct in that the construction would start before the board's final determination of the boundary study. In terms of construction, though, there are opportunities to construct without the formal conveyance through right of entry agreements or other forms of agreements, similar to how some of the mass transit is working on some of our property in terms of purple line work and those sorts of things. So that is feasible. Obviously, we would like to certainly flesh out the terms of what that may look like beforehand, but in order to properly conduct a boundary study of this magnitude, it is going to take about a year until the board makes its final determination. I think if we were to wait until final determination of the boundary study to break ground, we certainly would lose time on the overall schedule of the project. But it's just certainly a trade-off at that point.
Okay. I mean, best case scenario, or actually any reasonable case scenario, it's a local school where our students are going to that school. But I'm trying to think of ways to address the cataclysmic scenario where, say, after the BOE elections come, thoughts change and there's the decision that we're going to bus everybody into this site. I want to have safeguards in place to address that. And I guess I'm just saying that now, and I've talked to Lynn about this, about ways we can, so we'll have those discussions. But thank you for answering that question. The process, I had heard mentioned that one of the approved motions for the BOE on October 26th was to work with the city to provide a park amenity on Victory Farm Park. And it wasn't quite fleshed out what exactly that was, but it sounded to me like it was some kind of planning expenditure to build out a community amenity on the Victory Farm Park site. Or is that ring a bell with you at all? Or
no, that part doesn't. I know, part of the conversation was certainly to continue to work with mayor and council and staff on what potential offsetting improvements may look like. Certainly, we have a list of some of those recommendations, but I think from a board's perspective, they understand the magnitude of this ask of this construction project. And if there's a way to look to offset, the construction of an elementary school with some other improvements, we certainly want to explore that with the city and city staff.
Okay, so as it was conveyed to me, it sounded like it was an amendment to whatever's being considered on the 26th that got approved, but it sounds like it's more of a discussion going forward on the build-out amenities. One last question, again, I appreciate your candor and discussing things with me, is what happens if this council says no to the conveyance of Kelley Park? What is the procedure then?
So that's certainly, that's not staff. That's not something I guess I can say from a staff perspective. Okay. Certainly, we would have to take that back to the Board of Education for their guidance on next steps. Certainly, if the mayor and council said no, Kelley Park site is off limits for a new elementary school, we would certainly have to look for other opportunities to build an elementary school. Again, from the growth, this is not a build necessarily of convenience. This is a build of absolute necessity and need. So regardless of whether or not it's here, we absolutely have to build an elementary school for the Gaithersburg Elementary School Cluster. I'm not sure I can say with certainty what that would look like or what the next steps would be, but certainly our Board of Education would have to weigh in heavily on that.
And I appreciate the partnerships, and if you looked at the agendas, there's something later on tonight that may be of interest to you in discussing development in the area. But thank you for what you provided here today, for your answers.
Who's next? Mike?
Well, I agree with the statements that the mayor made, and my colleague here, Rob. I think we're all on the same page in terms of understanding the need for the school. It's an absolute necessity for the city of Gaithersburg and the students who live here, call it home. I think what I'd like to see is a site that optimizes walkers from as many communities as possible within close proximity, within walking proximity to the school. I don't think the Victory Farm site offers that, actually, and I think it actually results in more busing and much more traffic on Saybrook in that area, and certainly we've already heard about the potential costs, the impact, the environmental impact on the site around there. So I do like the plan. I'm always concerned when we see a plan about a school, and knowing, having lived here for 25 years and knowing how schools grow and enrollments grow, that there's always got to be room for relocatable classrooms. So can we go back to the overhead and you show us where that will occur and how that affects basically the programming of outdoor space for the school?
So we've identified at item 9,
Mhm.
a location where 4 portables could be placed on that paved play area.
Okay, so 4 portables. Well, I guess, when we look at relocatable classrooms in the area, there's usually a lot more than 4 that go into a school just to accommodate the enrollment. So I guess my concern would be that there is absolutely no provision to include space for relocatable classrooms other than on the property that's to be conveyed, so that there would be no other threat to the remainder of the park once that's conveyed. That would be one concern. The other concern I had was about access to the community of the park, of the remaining part of the park at any time during the day. You showed us the tot lot and the parking for that. And it's nice to see that cut out and perhaps elevated as well. But a lot of people use the walking paths surrounding the park anytime during the day, including during school hours. How is that? Is there any potential for loss of that access during school hours?
It was a focus during our committee process to actually to look at that. And one of the things where, if you see number 13 on the graphic, we've done a number of things to maintain that. And we also heard comments that we'll be able to use it while the school is in session, safety and security concerns as well. So what we've done is we've relocated item 13, which is adjacent to that volleyball sand area, and we've pulled it a little bit away from the building, actually, that pedestrian pathway. And if you can see in that dark region, there's a change in topography there as well. So there's a definitive difference on the plateau from where you come out to the school for school functions versus slightly downhill where the pedestrian pathway will be. So we've tried to do a number of things to make the architecture and the site be obvious to where the public is moving during the daytime and where the school is moving during the daytime.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I see that in the design. I guess the concern would be whether the security staff at the school are going to come running out of the building and shooing people away because they happen to be walking close to the school on those paths during school hours. And like I said, if we're going to convey this big chunk here, then we want people to be able to use the rest of the park at any time during the day, including during school hours. And there are a number of people who have said that the principal decides, for the security of the school, who's going to have access and to areas adjacent to the school. So that's a major concern, and I think that we need assurances about that accessibility, that it won't be subject to the whim, or not necessarily the whim, but concerns for safety of the students in the school. So I guess the other thing that there's certainly a number of other issues. It would be nice to have another field that could be used by the community for other purposes. We've had that. We already have that, but we're giving up a ball field and a multi-purpose field, I think. So having the field there, which looks like it's big enough for a couple of soccer layouts or something like that, is a good thing. I am a little bit confused about the locations of the various playgrounds for earlier age kids. But I guess if I think about it, compared in my neighborhood to how Brown Station is located, several playgrounds on either side of the building, this seems to make sense. So I like the architecture. I think it does well. I think the argument that we may, I think you can make a case that we may actually experience less heavy traffic as a result of the school being here because of the number of students that would be able to walk to the school, which I think is a great point. And then we'll go back to the boundary study, and I think, you know, like we've all said, that we are really concerned. I've lived through a boundary study that created a new high school and cluster, and really kind of disrupted the sense of community that was there. The boundary study that I experienced in 1995 and 96 brought out the most vile behavior in people that I thought much more highly of, until we started to talk about where they wanted their kids to go to school and where they wanted and the communities they wanted to keep out of the school once it was built. So I'm very concerned about those things. But I think here, I'm very concerned that the schools, that the neighborhoods that should benefit the most from the site might be victim to the same issues that happened with Forest Oak Middle School. So, you know, I'll support any part of the negotiation that provides some of those assurances, but I think that's the most important part. If the strategy,
hold on just one second.
let me finish. If the current strategy of the superintendent is to make sure that as many children can walk to school is a high priority, then, you know, I'm hoping that's what we realize here with this. And I think this site provides the greatest access in terms of communities that are adjacent in terms of walking distance than any other site we've seen.
I just want to give Seth a chance to
Yeah.
clarify on one of your points about how boundary studies work now. It's different from how they used to work.
Yes,
the process.
It is different. Certainly, there is new board policy and MCPS regulation on boundary studies. But the main difference is that we seek much more input from a variety of different avenues. So again, this process in which we would undertake would not just be a small committee. It would be large groups. It would be through surveys. It would be reaching out to families that we typically don't hear from in boundary study processes or other school types of processes. So we feel very firmly that the process will allow for maximum input. And I think that's really important for a process such as this, which you experienced in your high school boundary change. Certainly, every boundary can be sometimes challenging. There's a lot of emotions that go into boundary studies. But I think for us, if we can certainly have as much engagement as possible, I think that's where you find opportunities for greater success. In terms of the prioritization, absolutely, the walking element is certainly one of the criteria, but we also look at diversity, socioeconomics of our schools. We look at impacts, meaning stability in the school assignment. Certainly that is something that we'll have to take a very deep dive into on this particular project, particularly with a high school coming online that could certainly impact the Gaithersburg cluster community. So yes, this will be a complicated boundary study, but we hope that we're very clear and transparent in the factors that go into it, that we reach as many families as possible, and that we hope to have milestone updates along the way, so that there are no surprises as we continue through the process.
With the scope of the boundary study, including middle schools as well, there could be, we sort of immediately see that and say, can we right a 20-year-old wrong here? Is there an opportunity where possibly some people in the neighborhood adjacent to Forest Oak could actually send their kids to Forest Oak? And I'm assuming that the answer is yes, that could happen if that's part of the boundary study, correct?
Certainly, with both middle schools being part of the boundary process, we will have many scenarios that have a variety of different options, including exactly what you were talking about. So I think it is important to note, though, that with every option, we do have to look at what that impact is on that individual school as well as adjacent schools. But certainly, I think from a mayor and council perspective, to weigh in early in the process is certainly very important. I think also to be engaged in the process is going to be very important. So
I can tell you 100% we're going to be engaged.
We're going to be engaged. And I think the history here of this council over the years, and as long as I've been part of it, is that we've had a pretty good partnership and pretty good engagement. That doesn't mean it always comes out the way we want it. And I think one of the issues we're dealing with here is the history of articulation now to the schools that exist and why that happened. And I think that there are some strong feelings because it's seen as a fait accompli that what should benefit the most students in these neighborhoods adjacent to these sites is not going to happen. So there's a lot of pessimism and cynicism about this, and I think that's a lot of it comes from the history that we had to deal with from Forest Oak. So.
Let's go to Neil.
Sure. One issue that was touched on already was the access of various amenities during school hours, but I'm also curious about amenity access during construction itself. One of the things that we had discussed early on in this process was, if this project were to go forward, ensuring that the construction is minimally impactful on the use of the park. The walking path, for example, is pretty close to the border where construction would occur. People want to have access to that. It's an important amenity to get people out in the fresh air and trees and all that good stuff. What is the thinking along those lines at this point? I know it's a short-term issue, but it's several years worth of people's time.
No, it is a great question. Again, where we are used to building on existing operating school sites, we certainly take those access and availability of sites very seriously. So what I would say to your question is that certainly as part of the design is also the sequence of construction, and the sequence of construction will be very important in order to minimize disruption. So for us, what we would like to do is present various sequence options to city staff as we're going through the design process. Get feedback on, again, reducing our footprint as much as possible, but also, opening up areas, whether that be temporarily or permanently, depending on the sequence, to allow maximum access to the site. Also from a sequence standpoint, certainly we can prioritize certain areas of the site. So if, for example, the top lot and the field were a priority, we could look to some of those areas as potential elements to expedite during construction to bring them online earlier than maybe the overall building. But I think that's something that we certainly, as we work through that design process, much deeper understanding stormwater management, sediment control elements that we would want to present. Obviously, receive feedback from staff and really come up with a sequencing plan that can maximize options to the park, but minimize disruptions.
All right, thank you. So can we put up the slide again that Mike had asked for with the overhead view of the site? I had a conversation with our city manager this afternoon. I was a little taken aback by looking at this because from what I could see, from my expectation, a 5-acre footprint for a building is a small fraction of the site. And looking at this, it looks like you're taking up the whole park. But my understanding is there's a lot more to the park than what we're seeing on this map. So I'm not sure you're doing yourself any favors by showing this view to the public. Right. How much more of the park is there? I guess there's an entire baseball field up above the top of this drawing.
Yeah. Yes, the entire second baseball field is out of view of this particular image. Obviously this was an image developed to show the the school site itself, but certainly we could develop an image that shows the entire park property and what the 5 acres is that we're referencing here. But you are correct. This is not the entire park within this image right here.
All right, well, you frightened me, and I'm sure you frightened some people in the audience, so.
Well, let me just piggyback on that. So looking at the picture that we have on the screen here, when it's not during school hours, what parts of it will be available for use by the public?
So I don't know if you can see the mouse on the screen.
Yes.
So what we certainly would want to look at is one of the areas of an elementary school that we certainly have to take a very close view of is what happens during recess. Recess is, one of the most disruptive times on an elementary school site. So I think with that, the architect has done a really good job to isolate, potential areas for recess to one area of the site. So theoretically, from a school perspective, during the day, this 8, certainly, the parking and sort of the backside, we can certainly hug the building in terms of opportunities to work with our security folks to look at best practices over there, if we even need some best practices. But in terms of availability of the site, it's the entire northern portion of this, the entire trail.
No, I mean
area.
when it's not school hours.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
When it's
Okay.
not school hours,
Yeah.
this entire trail area, the 2 fields, this left side of the site and the top lot. So what we would really try to keep off limits from folks potentially using fields is really around our recess and potentially our PE areas, which are going to be focused locally in this area.
I'm not sure you were getting what Judd was asking, which is, okay, it's now 5
Let's say it's
o'clock.
3:30 p.m.
5 o'clock.
3:30 p.m.
and someone wants to use the field or the basketball court.
And it's open.
Oh, it's wide open.
The
Right.
play areas.
When school's not
Let's say it's a
yes,
Saturday or a Sunday.
it's wide open.
Right.
Saturday or Sunday, it's wide open.
So, item 8, item 6, the 2 item 7s on a Saturday afternoon are going to be wide open to the public.
Correct.
On an evening, assuming there's no official school activities there, on an evening after school is closed, those will also be open to the public.
Yes, correct.
And half the building is more or less is available for public meetings, engagements, whatever, as well, right? That whole left.
Yes, that
upper
entire
part.
left from the gym, the cafeteria, the media center, absolutely.
Seth, could you just clarify something for me? I thought you said during the presentation that the external amenities would be retained by the city of Gaithersburg subject to a shared use agreement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, or that's MCPS's intention. So like Lot 8, for example, would be city property.
Correct.
And then I guess, anyway, I just wanted to clarify that.
So
Thank
it'd be
you.
similar to the arrangement at Lakelands.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We
With
program it.
our park, we program the field.
Okay.
All right.
Did you have more?
I did.
Go ahead.
I'd like to talk about money. Since I'm the person with the business background and not the lawyer sitting up here.
We like money.
So just, you have to count it every once in a while. So my interpretation of what was discussed in terms of the alternatives that was discussed at Victory Farm was that basically because of topography and other issues, it would be much more expensive to build on that site, right?
That's correct.
So talking about difficulty and whatever, is it costs $10 million extra. That's money we'd rather spend on the you would rather spend on the kids than on building bridges or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this site belongs to the city of Gaithersburg for the benefit of the citizens of the city, or the residents of the city of Gaithersburg. So it's my feeling that, the boundary study is an interesting issue, and how to guarantee that if we went forward with this, that this school would be primarily for the benefit of the kids resident in Gaithersburg. So I don't know if MCPS does this or not, but basically I did a little bit of math here. You're spending $39 million on the school. That was the correct number, yes?
That's the total budget for the project. Certainly, there has been money spent. That the original appropriation was for the modulars at Summit Hall as well as there was some minor improvements at Gaithersburg Elementary. So total project cost for this we would assume to be our typical elementary school costs around that 35 to 36 million.
Okay, close enough. And the school is built to accommodate to capacity of 740 kids? Is that
Yes,
still the
that's
right
correct.
number? So that's about $50,000 a kid, right? I did that math already, you can trust me on that. I got good grades in math once upon a time. So basically, what I would suggest is that when the boundary study comes along, we make an agreement with MCPS that for whatever proportion of the school kids that are going to the school that aren't Gaithersburg residents, that amount of money would be paid to us.
Oh!
I mean, thank you. I mean, I'm a business person. This is how we do deals, right? We want to incentivize you guys to do what we want. Now, you don't have to, but it's our park and it belongs to our people. So I don't know if that's reasonable or not. I don't know. I know these people liked it, but I may have been pushing my luck a little on this one. But when I do contracts, what you want is to incentivize the other person to the behavior that you're looking for, and that's one of the ways to do it. Tony, you wanted somebody suggested that you weigh in.
There's lots of points of negotiation that will
Right.
come in here. I'm not sure that MCPS will consider that, but we can put anything on the table that you guys want to put on the table.
So
We have a long list.
Speaking of putting things on the table, do we have the list that we had put together in your letter last
I do.
time? Can we go through that in this part of this discussion?
It's a long list. I mean,
how long is it? It was about 15 items if I remember, but
18 items. A lot of stuff has been covered. Built with upgraded playground equipment, temporary playgrounds during construction, dedicated parking area for visitors. We would enter an agreement for free or discounted use of the school building, as we have done in the past. That we would define the areas that would be off limits during school hours in advance. Stormwater management had to be, the state-of-the-art stormwater management techniques and facilities. Kelley Park, we were requesting new expanded bleachers, integrating pathways into the overall Kelley Park pathway system, joint use agreement for the field, whether it's turf or grass, we're not really sure at this point, but the rectangular field. Upgraded playground equipment suitable for community use. Exterior security cameras capable of monitoring the back of the school and thus the remainder of Kelley Park as feasible. Construction stage to be minimal impact and to ensure continued use of the park. All amenities funded at the same time. So that the school doesn't get funded and then the field isn't, is left hanging. We requested that the elementary school and the existing middle school be included in the boundary study, but they've gone far beyond that. Formal participation by our planning commission in reviewing the plans themselves, the site plan itself. Feasibility study for multiple design options, which have already been presented. Public outreach to the communities, which has been completed. And a feasibility study for the wooded areas subject to contiguous to Forest Oak Middle School. So a lot of these things have already been integrated into the site. I did not have expectation when I wrote the letter that I would get all 18 points, but they're going pretty far.
Yes, we wanted all 18.
Now there's more points, so you never know. But it also states that there other things could come up. I think it actually says that specifically in the letter itself. But
I wanted that list read out because I want to point out to the audience that many of these things have been suggested by the public, and I think MCPS has been taking those concerns to heart, and I think I appreciate that, and I hope everyone in the city appreciates what's going on here. It's not so much playing hardball because we want to have a new school. We all agree that we need a new school for the kids in the Gaithersburg cluster. We're just trying to figure out a way to make it work as best we can. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think there's already been a lot of discussion about some of the bigger issues, and I'll echo a lot of the sentiments that my colleagues have shared already. And obviously, this presentation tonight starts with the assumption that this is the site that will be used. It's not a final decision that we've made. I think that's quite clear to everybody. But if we're taking that assumption for what it is with this presentation tonight, and operating under that presumption, of course, it's never ideal to to have to take away any part of a public amenity, particularly a park. And it may well be that if we do decide to proceed with the use of this particular lot, that this design may need to be tweaked a bit. I do agree with the mayor that if we were to operate under that assumption for purposes of this discussion, it's an attractive design. And I do see that MCPS made efforts, good efforts, to try and minimize the impact as much as they could. Again, not ideal, but I think you all clearly took to heart a lot of the concerns that we've raised and that the public has raised. There are some specific things that I just wanted to bring up and chat about. Mike already raised the issue of the walking path connectivity. In looking at the design, I was concerned that people, particularly looping around the north side of the lot, which is the bottom end of the picture of the property, right? North is actually the bottom of the picture. Could have some difficulty making a pedestrian connection if they're coming, say, from the left side of what is my left side of the picture, walking down towards the north side and then around, the front of the school where the parking lot is. That could be a bit of an issue. But I see that there is, a sidewalk there along Victory Farm Drive and some connectivity to the path that goes back around near the stream, and that you all have made an effort to make it all connected. But obviously it's going to be a different experience for pedestrians than it would be now if they're walking out of one of the adjacent neighborhoods and walking around the walking paths that exist, for example, around the softball field. So Mike kind of already raised that before I had a chance to, but that is a concern, and I think we're going to continue to work to try and make small improvements wherever we can for the pedestrian connectivity experience for folks walking around the exterior of the park or trying to use the footpaths. The other thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to ask about the roof of the building. And obviously, not necessarily going to be in a rendering at this stage in the process, but there are things like HVAC and electrical equipment and other things that go on the roof of a large building like this. And given the grade of the property, folks in neighborhoods around the building would kind of have sort of a downward-looking view onto the property and could easily see probably portions of the roof, particularly the portion that is the public accessible portion that is a lower height than the other portion. And just wanted to ask about what sorts of things MCPS does or could do to minimize aesthetic issues of HVAC and other types of electrical equipment on a roof that members of the public would be able to see from their houses. I don't know if you have a specific answer for that, but it's something I wanted to raise.
Sure, and that is a great question. It's a question that we're asked routinely. So certainly architectural screenings. So in terms of opportunities to build structures to hide that equipment is something that we typically do. I would say also our roofs are typically a hot topic for a variety of other reasons, particularly around vegetated roof applications, potentially solar panels. All of those are mandates for us from the state to investigate and evaluate. Typically, the vegetated roof has been sort of the law that has won out in those types of conversations. And certainly, the roof is a hot topic on all of our projects. What I would say is that we very rarely build and place mechanical equipment on a roof without thinking through the screening opportunities. And what I mean by that is just opportunities to essentially make it feel like it's part of the building and not see a big gray piece of equipment on a roof, but to see architectural screening that feels like the building. And Ron, I don't know if you want to go a little deeper into
Sure.
that.
There are a number of methods we take, whether it be parapet heights to screen the roof, decorative screening above the parapet height if the parapet height can't be high enough, and then very strategic location of any rooftop equipment. In particular, the side that you're talking from, so the view from the east towards the one story of the building, there's the high volume piece of the building, which is the gymnasium and the cafeteria, but behind that is the lower area, which is the art room and the music room, which is lower. So ideas of putting mechanical equipment on that lower zone and then taking a line of sight diagram from the high topography side on the east edge of the park to see if we still see it, and if we do, perhaps screening at the parapet or an increase in the height of the parapet.
So it's a tiered roof as it goes from
Yes,
east
sir.
to west?
Yes, sir.
On that section? Okay,
Correct.
okay, that's interesting to know, okay. I appreciate that. I have a personal interest in trying to advance solar on roofs in and around the city, so certainly would be very interested to have that conversation with you all. Again, I know it might be early days as we continue to have our negotiations in more fine detail. Have you all done solar yet on any MCPS projects in the county?
Yes, we have, I believe it's 14 school sites with solar. And it's a partnership with providers. So essentially, they own the panels. We buy the power back. It's been a model that certainly has been successful for us. But we're also looking to increase opportunities for solar. So again, every project we are evaluating what those opportunities look like. We certainly understand that there's, depending on the view shed, it could be somewhat controversial. So that's something that, if we were to go down that road, we would certainly have more conversations around if that changed the overall architecture of what that building looked like.
Okay. Let me ask you about, and again, this is early days. We're looking at this design, but let me ask you about crossing guards and how that might normally work in an elementary school of this size at a location like this with an intersection. I'm looking particularly at Belgrove Road and Victory Farm Drive, sort of the main entranceway for bus drop off into the school. How would that work? What times of day? Are the crossing guards also going to be stopping pedestrians to make sure the traffic can get out of certain roads at that intersection?
Again, a great question. It is one that I think is increasingly asked and has great importance. It is a program that's run by the county police department.
Okay.
So they essentially will do an assessment of the site.
Okay.
And staff it with crossing guards as they feel appropriate. I think that's a little tricky when you have a new school that comes online, but they certainly have been experts in terms of determining what are the appropriate crossing points, and they staff it appropriately. But certainly that would be part of our next step, is to engage and have that conversation with the police department around if it's one, if it's two, probably not more than two, but certainly it would have adequate coverage.
Okay. And just remind everybody in the public, the hours for drop-off and pickup, the standard hours for elementary school are?
So we have two tiers of elementary school. So the first one is right around 9 o'clock start time, end time around 3:20-ish. And tier 2 starts at 9:25 and releases right around 3:45. Don't quote me exactly on those times, but that's the ballpark.
I get it's an estimate. Okay. Okay, thanks. And then the last question I wanted to ask about, or just clarify, in the presentation, the overhead diagram identifies areas of paved and mulched play areas for different age groups. But in the animated flyover model that you showed us, it looks pretty clear that the mulched play areas are intended for additional structures. They're not just a mulched open play area. They're going to have a playground equipment or something like that on it, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then for the paved areas, there could be basketball hoops and other things like that. Okay. So those are all the questions I have at this point. Thank you.
All right. Well, if you guys would indulge, I realize it's getting late, but I also I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have another opportunity where the public is gonna have a chance to pose questions and comments. So if you guys would indulge us, that would be wonderful. This is the time the mayor and council would like to hear public comments on any topic that's not a public hearing topic. We do have 2 public hearings tonight. So if you're here to speak on either of those, hold on. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. State your name and address or your neighborhood for the record. When your time's down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow, and when your time's up, it'll beep and turn red. Who'd like to be our first speaker? Come on up, and please, anybody else who'd like to speak, please just line up. I know we're gonna have a bunch of you guys.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. And you all asked some very good questions.
Let's start with
Yes.
name and address. Go ahead.
Sorry, you all know me, but my name is Pam. Plastead neighborhood is Saybrook. I thought Councilman Harris's question was a valid one, or comment about $50,000 per student. And it made me kind of think, well, what about the possibility of asking MCPS to wait until they get $10 million, to be able to build infrastructure, road infrastructure to Victory Farm Park. Can you perhaps wait? I know everybody is just chomping at the bit for this park and everything, but if you just ask, can you just wait, a year? I don't know what I know things are kind of tight within the county, but could you just wait for that money to come in, and then we can renegotiate Victory Farm Park and ask and consider this plan, and then kind of flip it and put it perhaps at Victory Farm Park. The other thing is Kelley Park is only 0.2 miles from Victory Farm Park, so there's still an opportunity for people to walk there from the surrounding neighborhoods. I'd like to request the city to consider a moratorium on new housing construction. And that way also, as Councilman Sesma was saying, the opportunity for 4 portables, you don't have to deal with that as much. And I think that possibly when you're thinking about building, I agree with the councilman that having 4 portables, a limit to 4 portables is kind of not exactly as realistic as you all know. And so also I think for perpetuity to have an agreement that any housing unit within about a half-mile radius of any kind of potential elementary school should be forced. I understand there's a boundary study that could be conducted, but I believe that you all have the upper hand. You know that. They want this property. It's valuable. You'd like to get other property in exchange, I'm sure, but still to have this in perpetuity. I understand that the county, the school system is wanting to bus people in and out. It's been a big public story in the last week or so about busing cross county or across various territories. And so again, just a half-a-mile radius, KP, elementary, whatever you want to call it, and Forest Oak. And parking in this drawing is insufficient. If you combine it and put it at Victory Farm Park, you also get the benefit of the parking at Forest Oak. And you can save that $50,000 or more for the roof by putting it at Victory Farm Park. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Eleanor Davis from Saybrook. I'm one of the people that was involved in notifying our neighborhood that Forest Oak was going into our neighborhood when MCPS did not include us in any information whatsoever. And I understand that you're saying that boundary processes have changed in that you want more walkability. Well, MCPS hasn't changed how they do their site selection committee, deciding what neighbors are allowed to go to that committee, because every surrounding neighborhood of Kelley Park was excluded. Not one person went or was invited out of all these communities. So I don't share your enthusiasm for how things have changed, because I'm going by what you've done in the past. As far as a principal approving public use in their buildings, I agree with Neil Harris, but I want to say that Forest Oak doesn't allow anybody to use their building. We used to be able to use the media center and the all-purpose room. Now we're not allowed to. The tot lot has turned into a postage stamp. It went from 160 feet by 120 by 60 feet down to 40 by 40. Not acceptable. We don't have any baseball fields during the day, no tennis courts, and I'm not sure how the walking trails are going to be. As far as when school is not in session in the summer, there'll probably be summer camps at that school, and we won't be able to use the outdoor amenities. So I don't share your enthusiasm, and I really encourage the council to, if you're going to give away Kelley Park, make it part of the contract that Saybrook and the surrounding communities have to go there, or there's no deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Steve Kaufman, Audubon Square HOA. Have to agree, the school presentation looked great, but then I can put lipstick on a pig and make it look good. Let me remind you, no tennis courts, basketball courts, according to my math, half size, soccer field, half size, as they mentioned, tot lot, quarter size. It runs, drawing is actually to scale. Parking lot's only going to hold 100 vehicles, and I believe you were quoted 120 at some point, or more or less.
Steve, please address us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did see a service road or a service entrance drawn on the flyover. I see no traffic control added, no access lanes or turn lanes added. And I believe, as they mentioned, it was about a 20 to 30 foot grade on Victory Farm, and I think it's a 14-foot elevation or grade on Kelley Park with no retaining wall. We haven't seen any traffic studies or modifications to the circle, which I know for a fact a 40-foot Thomas bus with a 2-foot overhang can't physically navigate in a single lane. I've photographed it over 100 times. It can't be done. The math doesn't add up. With that said, let me remind everybody it was 1,107 votes in 12 days. We did it on a shoestring budget and not much more than a home printer and ink cartridges. I think the east side of Gaithersburg has displayed its desire not only to be heard but to be listened to. Only imagine if we'd had candidates that were running for council that had entered the race earlier. Would have been a lot of fun, gentlemen. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
My name is Kathy Wendell-Kowski.
Just grab that mic and there you go.
My name is Kathy Wendell-Kowski, and I live in Saybrook. And I have to admit, I'm one of the cynics that it was too late for my children when we moved into Saybrook, but I don't want it to be too late for anybody's children if they move into Saybrook now. I simply do not believe in NCPS about anything. But I have two questions that maybe perhaps have been answered at the meetings I was not at, so forgive me if I'm derivative or redundant. I've heard nothing about the mitigation during construction for the homes that front on Kelley or back onto Kelley Park. And I have yet to hear a cogent argument as to why the property that is signed for a future MCPS school that is between Mid-County Highway and Emory Grove, that's maybe a mile, at the most a mile and a half from Kelley Park, is not being considered for this school. Is it perhaps being considered for another school? I don't understand the disconnect. I lived in Flower Hill for many years, and my address was Gaithersburg. So the argument that it's outside of Gaithersburg doesn't make any sense to me because Flower Hill is theoretically outside of Gaithersburg as well, but there you have it. So I would like to hear what's going to be done to protect the residents, that if it's Kelley Park, which I think it will be no matter what we say, what's going to be done to protect them during the construction period, and then also what's the cogent argument against that site between Mid-County and Emory Grove. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let them answer that after we go through public comments. we'll bring up those questions. Yeah, come on.
Nancy Anthracite. I live on Sanders Lane, which is right near where the school would be. I want to say that I've looked at some of the other places that were originally parks and now are school park combined. Basically, as far as I can see, the park is not a park anymore. We've basically lost that. I think you lose the attractiveness of the presentation of the park when you can drive by and see people playing and all that. I think it's a big loss losing the tennis courts. I see old men out there playing. I see people sitting with the little kids running around on their tricycles. That tennis court gets a lot of use. It's very valuable to the community. I want to say during this day, if you exclude people from parts of being able to use the grounds until after 5 o'clock during the winter, let's face it, there's not going to be any little kids out there doing some of the things that they're doing now. Now I know you've made some accommodations for that, but I just don't feel as it's attractive, nor is what's left of the park going to be attractive to those little kids, or the old men for that matter. I also have a question about whether or not people across the street from Girard could walk to that school. I understood there's some sort of prohibition against little kids crossing 4-lane streets, and Girard's a 4-lane street. What would be done, even if you could get them to allow there to be walkers going to that school, to make sure that the people from the apartment complexes on the other side of Girard could actually attend the school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I live actually over in Memes Edition, so
Michelle, what's your last name?
Fish, F-I-S-H.
Thanks.
I might be a little late to the game on this, but I'm also new to Gaithersburg. I was trying to catch up on the history of the school proposal that's going on. At one point or another, the WSSC facility on West Diamond was a proposed site. Is there a reason why that was scratched? Because that's an already developed site that wouldn't have to have any trees knocked down or any additional impervious surface added. Also, with regards to the site that you are proposing at Kelley Park, is there any room for the driveway, the parking lots, any of that sort of material to be a permeable surface so that there is water retention? And I would also like to see more trees on the site if possible, since it is a park and you are taking up a lot of impermeable surface and putting in a lot of, sorry, I switched that around. You're taking up parkland and putting in a building. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Sergey Polikov. I live on Belly Grove Road. And so first of all, a great job at CPS in terms of making a plan. That's great. However, I feel that we as citizens here are being taken for a ride because, first of all, only one option is being discussed and it has been developed to the point of detail as it is right now. Other options are simply not considered. If I'm presented only one option, I typically disagree no matter what, how wonderful it looks and which kind of benefits it promises. On the other hand, it seems like there were several other possibilities, which were mentioned by the other people, that have not been taken into account whatsoever. And why? I think it's always a money issue. So I agree with Neil. Everything is a money issue. And in this particular case, the city has built and maintained a wonderful park with the infrastructure. So it's very easy to build upon that infrastructure. So you save a couple of $1 million just because the infrastructure is already there. You have a road that is going there. You have a parking lot. You don't need to develop these parts anymore. So the savings are right there. Now the question is, what does the city get for it? And it seems like the cavalier approach, rather very cavalier approach that MCPS is taking here is that, well, we'll decide later whose children are going to go there. there are no options left to the city, so you guys are presented with no options. And if you go with this rather cavalier approach of the city, and I guess I'm not a citizen, of the school system, and I'm not a citizen of a school system, but I'm your citizen here, then you will also be perceived as a group of people who were taken for a ride, right along with the constituents. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Thiessen. I live in Saybrook. I have some comments. I have some questions. I know you can't answer them, so they're food for thought. I heard MCPS say to a question, what happens if we say no to Kelley Park? I heard them say the money stays here. I'm assuming that means Gaithersburg. That's a good thing. I heard that the cemetery that was earlier that we talked about was of historical importance to Gaithersburg. So is Kelley Park. I heard that Victory Farm was more expensive, but now we have more money, $39 million to be exact. So maybe that could be looked at again. I'm curious what determines what schools get linkages for learning. How do they determine what schools will accommodate linkages for learning? And that goes with what economic factors go into a boundary study. I'm curious about that. I'm curious about the other successful partnerships that they've had with their cities and their park sites, and I'm wondering how Bethesda felt about that just recently. You said you have identified an additional 2,700 children that could accommodate 3 extra schools, elementary schools in Gaithersburg. That's 900 kids per school, and yet this one's 740. That math doesn't work for me either. I also want to know why non-Gaithersburg students are going to Gaithersburg schools. As much as I appreciate the deal that you were presenting, I don't know why non-Gaithersburg students are going to Gaithersburg schools since we're crowded. I'd be curious to know what schools have solar panels, where they're at. I guess I can look that up. Also, just to clarify, crossing guards are children. They do not stop traffic. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Lynn, and I live in Saybrook. Please go ahead. So first,
Lynn, please state your last name for the record.
My name is Lynn Nash, and I live in Saybrook, and I'm a friend of Kelley Park. I want to go off topic for a moment. When I was in Pensacola, I had a 7-year-old grandson, I still have one, who wanted a compost pile so he could grow worms. So we built a compost pile. I came back here, and I got into the habit, it's really kind of easy. I came back here, and I did Thanksgiving dinner, and I had, Thanksgiving creates a lot of stuff. I had pumpkin peels and potato peels. And so I looked up the Gaithersburg initiative for drop-off food scraps. And guess what? It's on Rabbit Road, which is on the other side of town. Initially, I was kind of surprised, but then I remembered, oh dear, I live on the east side, the poor side, the side where we don't have any amenities. So, gee whiz, why should I be surprised? My first comment is, I'd like to know what happened to the $11 million, Tony, that we talked about when we came to visit you. That was money that you and MCPS were fighting over regarding infrastructure. And it would seem to me that this $11 million, which Neil has confirmed it still exists and it might even be a larger amount of money, why this money could not be used to build the road that would make Victory Farm feasible. Because guess what? MCPS originally said when they were doing their earlier community meetings that this new school would increase the number of traffic cars by 496 a day. Don't ask me how they got that number, but that's it. My second topic for tonight is parking on Victory Farm. So Neil didn't know how many spaces there were, so I actually went out and mapped it for you. There are 26. And if you move the entry into the proposed new school directly across from Bell Grove, you're going to have to take some of those spaces. Now, why is this a problem? Well, those 26 spaces are filled 100% of the time at night. And anybody that can't get into one of those spaces, and those spaces generally don't belong to the folks on Bell Grove or the folks on Saybrook or even the folks sometimes on Newport Estates, they belong in other places. So if you take and change that road, what's this going to do to overnight parking? We already have 40 or more cars every single night in our neighborhood, and the others do too. Could you please address this? Perhaps we'll allow overnight parking in whatever school site that comes up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Oscar Alvarenga. I live off of Braylon Court. And I just wanted to, I go to a lot of MCPS meetings, especially right now with the boundary studies. One of the misconceptions is that MCPS is working on a county-wide change. There are over 4 schools that are being built in Montgomery County right now, and boundary changes are going to happen anytime a new school is built. There'll be an opportunity for folks to come out on Wednesday to hear more at Gaithersburg High School about the boundary study being done by the actual company. The other thing is that I know a school, we've been fighting for a school in Gaithersburg for over 8 years. I've been on that path for at least 8 years, that our cluster needs a new school. And obviously, I'm glad I don't have the job right now of picking where that school goes, but we need a new school. We're over capacity. The numbers show that our cluster is one of the highest over capacities clusters across the county. So we need a new school. I do agree with the folks here that if a school is built at Kelley Park, that the residents and the students from that neighborhood should benefit from that school. I do believe that the constituents that live in that area should have some freedom to be able to use the parks that are going to be used up, and that the kids and everything should be transparent moving forward with them. Obviously, I live next to a school, and it's been very beneficial, and we love it. I think MCPS throughout the county does a good job with students that are walkers. Gaithersburg Elementary is one of the highest walking schools, and it's a very safe school. They've done a good job in making sure that that happens. Summit Hall is a lot of students walk to Summit Hall. We've, up to this point, my 10 years I've been there, we haven't had any issues, thank God. So I think a lot of the concerns, as humans, we are working on making sure these things are taken care of. The number one thing is our students. So that's my thing. We have been fighting for a long time. This isn't new. There's been over 11 sites looked at over many years. And over time, they keep coming up and they keep getting down. And at this point, this is where we're at. So I know a new school is needed. It has to happen. But the students and the families in those neighborhoods should be able to attend those schools. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Melissa McKenna, and I have now proudly been in Hidden Creek for 16 years. That went fast. As a former NCC PTA Capital Improvements Program Committee Chair, Mr. Ashman, Mr. Sesma, I know you have been through all of MCPS. And boundary studies and new schools. And no, we can't wait. Gaithersburg absolutely cannot wait. They have already waited 8 years. And that is the entire cluster, not just the city. And when I say that, because I run into this a lot of times when I talk to the city of Rockville as well. And they say, for our students and for our citizens. Well, you are also educating the students in Laytonsville that come here as part of Gaithersburg cluster. And it was very important, and Oscar and I fought, to keep Gaithersburg Elementary School students here in Gaithersburg instead of having to ship them all the way out to Laytonsville. So there's a reason this school needs to be here. I was on the site selection committee. We saw lots and lots of sites. And no, the fact that Victory Farm Park wasn't even included in, sorry guys, but some of the craziness that was presented was a key to me that it really was not going to be viable. For as many years as I've been dealing with MCPS, and I'm sure Mr. Adams and Ms. Karamijas can attest to this, this is going to be highly unusual. Good job, guys. Really. No, MCPS has gone far and above anything I have seen before in listening to the community, working to enable the community, taking into site design and school design. As far as amenities, I would just say please make sure that there is access by the city for city programs into the school once it is open. This has been a problem for Brown Station, and it was for Bayard Rustin and Rockville as well. So the crossing guards are adults. Our students are the patrols, and it gives them leadership and responsibility, and they are very responsible when they do it. But it is the adult crossing guards that manage the streets. Will this be busing? No. Actually, it will eliminate it. Strawberry Knolls has the privilege of accepting students from all of Hidden Creek on both sides of Midden County. I'm sure that might probably be broken up, and living on the opposite side of Mid County and being boundary to go to Gaithersburg Middle School, some days I would drive my daughter to school, would come all the way down and be at the stop sign, look ahead at Forest Oak Middle School, and take a left to proceed on to Gaithersburg Middle School. I know that MCPS can't promise you that Forest Oak will be made whole. It's been 20 years. I'm hoping we can all move beyond that because this is a different process and they are taking that very much into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Lavinka from Gaithersburg. I moved to this community because of jobs, because of the schools. Our daughters, congratulations to a great school system. One is a PhD and employed, the other is a school teacher. Appreciate that our school system gave them a great background. One of the other reasons we moved here has to do with the green spaces. We love Gaithersburg on our side of the city. In the Kentlands area, the Kentlands Park, the Lakelands, that area is beautiful. I've helped with pickups at Kelley Park. I know it's a smaller park, but it's certainly a green space that must be appreciated by those residents. If some of that space is given up, I guess the question I had, is there some trade-off? Is there another park that goes in somewhere else, or do we just lose that as park space for the city residents? That's my only point.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Do we have any other speakers? Come on up, Chantal.
I don't want to miss that. All right, my name is Chantal Prelinger.
I didn't see you coming up, Beth. You can speak next.
No. Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead, Chantal.
Okay, Chantal Prelinger, and I live in Whetstone Run. Okay, and I just listened to the presentation here, and I have a few things I'd like to mention. Forest Oak Middle School is still an unfinished business for us, and it looks a lot like a déjà vu. Okay, Forest Oak does not authorize anybody on the property during the school hours. So what makes us believe that anything could happen in Kelley Park? The park that is presented to us is too small, and there's not much left for us. Is a joke. I feel strongly, and you all feel strongly that this
Chantal,
is the right place.
us.
But I don't feel strongly that I want a school there. This is my neighborhood, and I wonder how many students from outside of Gaithersburg come to Gaithersburg. Why can't they deal with their own problem, build their own school, and we have our own children in Gaithersburg educated there? Or if they can build a school somewhere else. We can bus our kids from Gaithersburg there. And I heard also about portables. Why would we even think about portables on a new project? Doesn't make sense. Well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Junium from Saybrook. I want to go down memory lane one more time. When Forest Oak was going to be built, the city came to our community and said, your children are going to be able to go to this school. So just let the project move forward. And indeed, the neighbors did exactly that. Before the school was completed, and the communities, people were buying houses thinking that they would be able to have their children go to that school, the neighbors were told, MCPS said, oops, sorry, we made a mistake, your children can't go to that school. Now, come to present day. Our children can't go to the school, nor can we use that school for any of our HOA meetings, annual meetings. We are not allowed to participate inside of that school at all. I don't understand. I thought that we could use the school for activities.
Please address us.
Use the school for activities. I want him to hear it. I think that's something you have to take into consideration. When this park is gone and that land has been turned over, they're going to do what they want to do, and you will have nothing to do with it. And trust me, we can't use the school for anything. Why is that? Also, I seriously hope you will consider that there will be no groundbreaking for this school until we hear that the children, if it is to be built on Kelley Park, that the children can attend that school. You can't give the park away and not let our children go there. You just can't do it. It can't happen again. So their legacy to us is the fact that we were going to go to the school. Whoops, no, you can't go to the school. That's their legacy. And memories are long in our community over that. So I just want you to know that, I wanted to ask Tony, will the Upper Kelley Field path be kept in the domain of the city?
Yeah.
Yay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
My name is Kevin Rogers.
Topic change.
Slight topic change. I hope that's okay. My name is Kevin Rogers, 550 Long Point Road, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Here, because of item number 12 on the agenda, we are the owners of the Lake Forest Mall. And as many of you know, we have contractual rights to purchase the 4 other portions that comprise the otherwise known as a 100-acre Lake Forest Mall. So our intention by the end of the year is to close on the purchase of those 4 other parcels, reassemble. The analogy I've used is Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall quite a long time ago, broke into 5 pieces. We've assembled and purchased one. We've purchased one. We've assembled all the others. Our intent is by the end of the year to put Humpty Dumpty back together much better than it ever has been before. In the parlance that I've heard before, to create, if not equal to, far better than an A product. 2 compliments. And just so you know, when you get to that agenda item, I'll be here, our team will be here if there's any questions specifically that any of you have. You're welcome to ask me. 2 compliments, one to past governments here, past city councils, past mayors, current council, current mayor, past staff members, current staff members, and even the residents. On that 100-acre mall site, in a very short period of time, we have gathered interest from more home builders, retailers, competing theaters, competing grocery stores, who want to be a part of a new project then we have room to fit on 100 acres. And that's a compliment to the city itself and to the residents. More specifically to a couple of to the staff members that we've been dealing with, I realize full well that they have full-time jobs. They have many other things to deal with. The prior item on the agenda list is a perfect example. They have always found time, Tony, Lynn, John, Tom, others, to listen to us, talk to us, provide critical feedback. To get to this point, the agenda item on the list gives us and our lenders, if approved, comfort to know that in very broad strokes there is a general meeting of the minds amongst ourselves in the city that within those confines and following all the typical planning and permitting and submittal guidelines that the city already has, that we can create a great new mixed-use project. Thanks.
Thank you. Come on. All right. Hold on a second. Okay, here's the deal. This is actual government meeting. We are conducting the business of the city. I will not tolerate disruptions. If anybody wants to yell out, I'm going to ask them to leave. Would anybody like to leave at this moment so they can get it out? Okay, please, go right ahead, Carl.
Hi, my name's Carl Van Est. I live at 52 Redding Ridge Drive in Gaithersburg near Wesley. To Paul Levinka's point, the additional parkland, the change of, adding new parkland, the location that this gentleman was just talking about is a perfect location for an additional park that could go in for the park space that we're losing. We can take a look at all the runoff that comes off of the streets surrounding Lake Forest Mall. We have to do a better job in handling that kind of water flow. When you walk along our parks, you see the water that's overrunning the streams, right and left. And of course, that's going down and affecting our neighbors. Alexandria's flooding, those kinds of things. So we need to take those situations very seriously. So additional parkland, maybe in the Lake Forest area, a trade-off for the space that we're losing would be a great solution for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. Thank you guys very much for staying. I'm going to just ask a couple questions to follow up on some of what came up from the public. During construction, can you describe some of the mitigation that happens to, be sensitive to the immediate neighbors?
So again, we our typical process is to build in the hearts of communities. I mean, that is where the MCPS schools are located. So our practices have been very sensitive to the impacts. Different ways of handling dust control, mitigating noise. So going to white noise instead of the backup sensors. Looking at ways to isolate construction activities to certain times of the day, so it's not impacting families at meal times or any of those types of events. So I think for us it is something that we take great pride in how we build. I think when we talk about something like this and how we could mitigate, certainly everything to mitigate from noise, disruption, maintain access, maintain certain amenities. Again, from a sequencing standpoint, can we add parking before we take parking away? I think all those are elements that we would look through and see what are the right opportunities for this particular site.
Okay. There are a couple questions about this site selection versus others. Where can people find the background on the site selection process?
So this actually is a process that started, as you heard from other folks, 9 years ago. Started as a capacity study, transformed into a site selection. Overwhelmingly, we heard from folks, particularly in the Gaithersburg elementary area, about the walkability of that school. That translated into the board asking us to look into essentially doubling the size of a typical elementary school at Gaithersburg Elementary. We looked at a school, I believe it was a little over 1,100 size elementary school. Overwhelmingly, you heard from the academic side that that was not the right move, the right decision for elementary school kids. So then we transitioned into a site selection. Site selection, again, with that understanding that, the walkability of the Gaithersburg Elementary area, the walkability of our schools was vitally important. Obviously this is why this site is one that obtained high reviews from the committee. You look at some of the other sites, things around availability, areas outside of walk zones. I mean, all those were contributing factors. So again, this project has quite the history, starting with a capacity study to a supersized elementary at Gaithersburg Elementary, then transitioning into a capacity study. All of that is online on our website. If any of it's been taken down, I'll certainly put it back up, but it's certainly it's been well presented to the Board of Education and has been posted on our websites for many years.
Thank you. What schools get linkages for learning?
So linkages is a county health function that's on an MCPS function. So the sites that the county deems as a necessity from a health department standpoint, they go through a funding process, they staff these and they actually fund the construction of linkage spaces. So it is a health department function, not necessarily a school system function, but it is a great partnership that we've had for many, many years. And it is a function that serves the communities that they're in very well.
In terms of the accommodation for students who might be walkers from across Girard Street, which is, I don't know if you guys can envision where Girard is in comparison to where the site would be, but how do you think? I'm assuming that would be in the walkable area, right? It's like within half mile. Is that the radius you guys use?
I believe it's a mile for elementary schools.
It's a mile. So what sort of accommodations would you use in a case like that for getting kids from across Girard over to Victory Farm?
What is a case-by-case basis, but I think if there are any potential pedestrian challenges, then we would look to add buses. That could be in situations directly across from a school in which they could not access safely. We looked at transportation. I'm not sure the Girard crossing would be one of those situations, but certainly our transportation folks, as well as your police force, as well as the county police force, would certainly weigh in on that type of decision. But if it's deemed to be a potential safety issue, we provide transportation.
Okay. Before I let these guys go, any further questions? Neil's looking at me real
I just
sternly.
wanted to weigh in on a couple of questions here and clarify some things. So just to go a little deeper, Sergey, I guess, had made a comment about this being the only site that was being looked at, and hopefully from what you just heard, you understand that there was a multi-year process where a large number of sites were looked at first. This was the site that was selected, and that's why we're here. We're already at this point, several years down the road of a long process. And for, I think it was Kathy who was looking at the elementary school site across the street, across Mid-County. I think the comment that was made when that site was deemed not appropriate was because they didn't want kids walking across Mid-County Highway. Girard is not nearly the level of traffic that Mid-County Highway is. I wouldn't want to see elementary school kids crossing that street. So there'd have to be some special accommodation for that. So there was several other comments that talked about schools in Gaithersburg versus not in Gaithersburg, and I didn't want you to misread my comment about the school site. MCPS is not the Gaithersburg School District. There are almost no schools in the city of Gaithersburg. that are only Gaithersburg kids, and there are many schools outside of the borders of Gaithersburg that have Gaithersburg students. The borders don't line up, the zip codes don't line up, the elected official districts, aside from us, don't line up with the city borders. It just doesn't work that way. The reason I made that suggestion is because this land is owned by the city, and I just felt that there should be some accommodation for a trade of land. But in general, it's MCPS's school boundary borders are dependent on many factors, and this is near the border, the edge of the city. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point there was some interest in non-Gaithersburg kids going to this school. It's our job to make sure that we get the best for our kids, but it's MCPS's job is a little bit broader than that. So I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that.
Right.
Just a smaller item. One of the members of the public mentioned permeable pavers, and again, talking about different little things that we can do around sites to make a bit of an positive environmental impact. I'm curious if MCPS has experience using those for parking lots or pathways within its sites or anything like that.
Yes, absolutely. We do look. Obviously, pathways are a bit easier to maintain than roadways, but we do have parking areas that have pervious pavement. I would say, absolutely as strict as the state stormwater management design standards are, absolutely that is considered. Again, everything from vegetated roofs to cisterns to pervious pavement, absolutely is on the table. So I would venture to say that this site certainly will have amenities like that. I can't necessarily say exactly where today because that is quite a design process, but many of our new schools do have those types of stormwater features.
One of the...
You first.
Did I jump in?
Yeah,
Okay, so one of the members of the public seems to have heard that we have 2,700 new students in the Gaithersburg cluster this year, and I think she misheard that, but maybe you can explain. You actually meant that the MCPS overall increased its enrollment by 2,700 students.
That is correct.
In 2019.
Not just in
Not just in Gaithersburg. So that's distributed across all of the high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. So I just wanted to make sure that's what I heard.
Right.
But if that's the average, if the average increase in enrollment on an annual basis is 2,700 students, we already have 150,000 students in the system already, right? Something like that?
Close to 170 now.
170. So we're adding, 2 or 3% every year to that. The need for new schools, it should be obvious to everybody. So finding those sites seems to be important.
Ron.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, thanks, Seth. On the stormwater management or the permeable surfaces question, has there been any discussion as to MCPS paying stormwater management fees for this project if it goes forward? And you can defer to hire if that's not within your wheelhouse.
No, I mean, we typically do not pay stormwater fees. Many of our sites, we transition to the County Department of Environment to maintain a lot of these facilities. So it's looked at from a much bigger perspective and less of a developer type of approach. We look at it from a countywide overall stormwater management perspective. So again, we do standalone projects in partnership with environmental protection. Again, every one of our school sites has different features, ultimately are maintained by the county. But no, we do not pay stormwater fees as I think what could be seen from other types of developers. If that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
All right. Tony?
Just as a wrap up, Mr. Mayor, and I know that, I mean, there's a lot to keep straight here.
Yeah.
A lot of emotion, a lot of kind of latent anger that as your negotiator, I'm not going to be able to undo. But I really think that one way to get everybody at least on the same page is I really think we need to draft an agreement. I have negotiating authority now. I mean, I'd like to work with these gentlemen so that you can see what an agreement looks like and the various aspects therein, and I'd like to move to that stage. Obviously, I can't approve any agreement, it has to come before you.
To come back, yeah.
But I really think that then everything is on paper, everything is out there, you know, who's going to do what, who's going to own what, and the parameters of this project. So I would like to request that, you know, that would bring that to you as quickly as we can do that.
Well, we in June of 2018, the council authorized you to negotiate
Correct.
that agreement, so you're authorized.
Thank you.
Bring it back and we'll vote on it, or discuss it at least. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Discuss it before we vote.
Yeah, we will do that. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the participation from the public too. Thank you all. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is our first public hearing, joint public hearing. I want to thank the Planning Commission for their patience. Sorry, guys. Again, if everyone could please have your conversations outside.
This side of the dais.
Yeah.
Way over there.
Guys, please do not stay in here for conversations. Come on, let's.
Good for you. Like, your Facebook feed shows you a better projects.
They never seem to end.
Laura May Food. Thanks for your patience. This is Sharon Cantrell's first Planning Commission meeting with us, and they don't always start this late, so.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, but welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and commissioners. This is a joint public hearing on text amendment CTAM 8336 2019, which addresses parking requirements in the Old Town District as well as a minor housekeeping item. This hearing was advertised on November 14th and 21st, 2019 in the Washington Post and posted on the city's website since November 13th, 2019. There are currently 11 exhibits in the record. The individual exhibits may be reviewed at City Hall during regular business hours or on the city's website. Any objections to the receipt of any exhibit should be noted prior to the closing of the record. Otherwise, they will be deemed received into evidence. To give you a little bit of background on this, in 2015, the city adopted a new parking ordinance. One of the new provisions of the ordinance exempted properties within the Old Town District from parking requirements. So no on-site parking is required for changes in use or for redevelopment of property within the district. This provision was made effective for 5 years, so it's due to expire on February 2nd, 2020. And this map is just to give you an idea of the boundaries of the Old Town District. It's outlined in blue here. When this parking exemption was first put in place, one of the justifications for it was the 100-year-old development pattern in Old Town. You can see on the map here that on several of the lots, they're outlined in red. The buildings take up all of the lot or almost all of the lot. So requiring on-site parking for these property owners really is a burden. Additionally, there is ample public parking available in the Old Town District for people to park and easily walk to the local businesses. This map gives you an idea of the number and locations of the different public spaces. Just in the parking garage across the street, there's over 300 spaces. And then there's several other lots with each providing around 50 public spaces, and that's in addition to the parking provided here at City Hall. As I mentioned earlier, this parking exemption was originally put in place with a sunset date. The purpose of this was to create an initial test period so that staff could go back and review the impact of the parking exemption after a few years. Both planning and economic development staff are of the opinion that this parking exemption has had a positive impact and allowed business growth in Old Town. This amendment proposes to continue to not require on-site parking for changes in use or for redevelopment of property in the Old Town District without a sunset date. And just to give you an example of The impact of this provision, this map shows new use and occupancy permits that have been issued for businesses in the district that have benefited from this parking exemption. So in other words, without this, these businesses would have had to obtain a parking waiver either from staff or from Planning Commission before they could operate. And there's 11 shown on this map here. And then the minor housekeeping item that's included with this text amendment concerns short-term rentals. The Mayor and City Council adopted the short-term rental ordinance in October of this year. The adopted ordinance did not include staff's recommended changes for the RH zone. Those changes are included here with this ordinance. Consistent with what was approved in other residential zones, this amendment proposes to allow short-term rentals as an accessory use in the RH zone. That's our high-density residential zone. And then also it revises a reference to multifamily housing just to be consistent with the rest of the city code and with the definitions section. So staff recommendations. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold the record open until 5 p.m. Tuesday, December 31st, with recommendation on January 8th, 2020. And staff recommends that council record remain open until 5 p.m. Thursday, January 16th, with policy discussion scheduled for February 3rd, 2020. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Questions?
Just to clarify, this special parking exemption targeting Old Town was intended to try to promote economic development in Old Town, a policy adopted by the city in 2015.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And it seems to have worked, at least in
Yes.
part, correct?
Yes. Staff is of the opinion that it has been successful.
And it's one of, you don't have to answer this as a rhetorical question.
Okay.
It's one of many policies that we have implemented over the years to try to improve Old Town.
So could I ask a question?
Yes.
So is included in the recommendation, is it to have the same period that this would go into effect, or would this be permanent?
This would be
change?
permanent.
Permanent.
Yes. So we could come back and do a text amendment again to take it out, but this proposes not including any type of sunset date.
Okay, so why not just, if things really do develop, then we might actually have to have redevelopment include parking, just because of an increase in density. So why not just do a 5-year renewal or something like that?
Staff did not think that was necessary with this because originally the 5-year sunset date was put in place just as a test period. We don't think another one is needed. That is something we discussed internally. We do think it's appropriate not to have it now, but again, there is the option that there is an issue in the future. We can come back with another text amendment to change it.
So a multifamily development or building would have to include parking anyway, though, right? For its residents?
Right. The market would presumably take care of that, and it's something that Planning Commission would review with site plan approval.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Out of all these parking spaces that you've identified, the public parking spaces available, how many, at peak usage time, how many are still free? Do we still think that there's an excess of parking available?
I'm not sure exactly the numbers of what's free. I can just tell you anecdotally, when I was out there counting spaces, there were free spaces, but I don't have any exact numbers to give you.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is I can see that this is working, but I also hear from residents anecdotally that they think parking is challenging in Old Town, finding a parking spot. So I'm having trouble reconciling that people complain that it's hard to find parking, and yet we think there's enough.
Staff is of the opinion that, it really is hard for these property owners that have no parking to provide on-site parking, and it would require them to continually go back for any change of use to Planning Commission. So we do think it is appropriate. Again, I don't have those exact numbers of parking usage currently.
All right, just curious.
Well, it seems like the issue, though, is really people don't know where the parking is, which is why there may be empty spaces at any time during the day.
That is a possibility, yes.
So perhaps we should consider doing something about that.
Any other questions before we open this up to the public? Okay. This is the time when the Mayor and Council and Planning Commission like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to speak on this topic. Same rules as before. 3 minutes, state your name and address. Do we have any speakers on this topic? Please, come on up.
Nancy Anthracite on Sanders Lane. I just would say, what assurance is there that the public spaces will remain there and that they're going to be adequate? And for that reason, I would say maybe make it 5 years again, so we can look at it again as development proceeds to see what the situation is at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testimony from the public? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Okay, well, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission hold their record open until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December 31st, 2019, with anticipated recommendation to the Mayor and City Council on January 8th, 2020. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, our recommendation is to hold our record open until 5 p.m. on Thursday, January 16th, with anticipated policy discussion on February 3rd. What's the pleasure of the council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, Chris Berger. This is a public hearing on CPSC, sketch plan for CPSC Park. Thank you, Laura. Chris, thanks for your patience.
You're very welcome.
This is a joint public hearing for sketch plan application SK 8271 2019 for a future city park at the former Consumer Product Safety Commission site. The application proposes a 9.54 acre park with parking, community gardens, a bicycle skills course, open space, pavilions, playgrounds, fitness pods, walking trails, and the potential for an up to 15,000 square foot recreational building. And we have drone footage of the site to orient you while I continue.
This is the best part.
It is. First, you will see the access road that extends from Darnestown Road. The Wesley neighborhood is to the west, and Washingtonian Woods is to the east. Then you will see a view of the proposed park going from west to east, then going from east to west, and finally we have a view of the future pedestrian access point at Marsh Lane, which goes into the park. Please note that the intention was to also review the schematic development plan at tonight's meeting, but that application was not ready for the joint public hearing and will go before you at a future date. So tonight, only the sketch plan is under review. Notice of this public hearing was published in the November 14th and 21st editions of the Washington Post. The property was properly posted with signs, notifications were mailed, and notice was given on the city's website. At the present time, there are currently 14 exhibits in the record file. These exhibits are available for review at City Hall during regular business hours or any time on the city projects page of the city's website. The property was annexed into the city in 1987. It was rezoned to MXD in 1997. The city acquired it from the federal government in 2014, and in 2015, the mayor and city council appointed an ad hoc citizen committee to review the property and make recommendations for its use. And in 2016, the committee presented its recommendations for the park site to the mayor and city council. The applicant has now submitted this application to establish a sketch plan for the property in accordance with section 24-160D.9A of the City Code, application for the MXD and sketch plan approval. Sketch plan is the first step in the MXD development process, and it provides the overarching framework for all subsequent plans. It reflects the general compliance with any master plan recommendations for the property and lays out a macro level design pattern and connectivity network. It establishes the uses allowed on site and is intended to provide a lot of flexibility. Finer details such as the locations of play areas, pathways, and structures will be addressed later with the schematic development plan and the final site plan. And now I would like to introduce Alice Storm Jones, who's a senior associate at Flora Teeter Landscape Architects, for the presentation. And also joining us is project manager Sunil Prithviraj of the Gaithersburg Public Works.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Sorry for the delay.
Oh, it's fine. All right, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Alice Storm-Jones from Florida Teeter. I'm just going to go over this quickly. We have an introduction, which includes our team, the background, and a little bit of the site analysis, and then we'll introduce for questions. So first of all, again, I'm Alice Storm-Jones with Florida Teeter Landscape Architects. My colleague Lydia Kimball isn't here, but she's been on this project since we started it in the master planning process, probably close to 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Joe Ignatius is also on our team, and then Billy Swales from Triad is also, he's providing civil engineering services for us. This is an image of one of the public meetings that we had actually in the warehouse a few years ago. But as Chris just said, this is kind of just giving you a little bit of location of where we are. You can see that we are nestled into an existing neighborhood and with Washingtonian Woods to the east and Wesley to the west. And you can see that our property is approximately 9.5 acres in the center of these established neighborhoods. And you can see our little tail, which is the access road that was shown in that drone footage. A little more context provided here. You can see some of the existing conditions of the site. Currently, it is surrounded by a 6-foot fence with barbed wire on top of it. There is a locked gate currently that prohibits access. You can currently turn down the road, but you can't access the internal part of the property. Right now, you can only, and this would be the intended, it would stay this way, but you could take a right into the property and then continue down Darnestown. And existing on Darnestown right now are, we have bike lanes and we do have pedestrian connections with sidewalks on either side. And there is a ride-on bus stop right at the entrance of the park. Some of the other existing conditions you can see here, these are some images of some of the vegetation that's currently on site. It is a pretty wooded site. It's been nicely maintained since CPSC has left, but there are some existing really nice trees. That image number 3 is an existing elm that's on site that we're going to retain and make an asset into the park design. But then as you can see the image to the other side of it, that number 2 site, there are some existing trees that are of some caliber but have had a lot of damage to them over the years. So we have done an extensive survey of the existing conditions of the vegetation there. So we do know what is in good condition, and we've walked the site with Andrew Benjamin of City of Gaithersburg, and we've evaluated all the trees, so we know what we're keeping and what are of value to the property. Again, of note as well is number 4 on this site plan shows an existing tree line there, which consists of white pines and red cedars. And we're going to try to maintain that as much as possible to keep a little bit of visual barrier between the existing community and the development that's going in there. So we're really trying to evaluate the existing conditions and making sure that we're keeping a lot of the vegetation that's currently on site. For your review is the sketch plan. This was submitted July 26th. So again, showing this 9.5 acre property. Is showing the circulation is going to be very similar to what's existing now, with vehicular traffic coming off of Darnestown up that access road into a parking lot which will be right at the terminus of that access road. And the only other access point that we're adding is a pedestrian-only connection at Marsh Lane. And that's what we have for you tonight. So as Chris mentioned before, the plan will include community garden, a bike skills course. We do have an open space. It's not the size for athletic fields, but it'll provide an open space for kids to play and kick a ball around, but it's not an actual field size. We have small individual pavilions for picnicking. We will have playgrounds, we will have fitness pods, and then also a pedestrian trail that will go the perimeter of the site for just walking and running and things like that. And then again, the pedestrian connections from Darnestown Road and Marsh Lane.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. So when is the expected SDP? When do we think we're having that?
Within the next few months, it should be coming relatively soon.
It's almost finished.
Yeah.
Almost
It's almost finished, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, questions? We'll start with Ryan, we'll go to Lloyd.
I just a statement. I have to express great frustration with the slow pace of the process. I know there are all kinds of external factors that cause that, but I'm really frustrated that it's taken so long. I'm glad to see that we've got the sketch plan in front of us, but even that is, as you've said, just kind of a general concept plan. And, it's still going to be several more months before we see the SDP. And if you look at the sort of the narrative history of all of this, look, I know these things take time, and we had to do the demolition and we had to do other things, but we got this property in January of 2014. It's about to be 2020, so I'm hoping we can really move it along in 2020. That said, I did note that we had some earlier discussions about some pedestrian connection in the upper left corner of the sketch plan. I don't know if that's northwest, but the upper left corner where you would sort of potentially connect to Treeworthy. I know there isn't any. I don't think there's any easement or any city property there between the residential lots, but there had been some discussion. I guess it was a number of years ago when we were talking with the ad hoc committee about that. Have we all just sort of concluded that's not doable because there just isn't any easement or any way to do that?
Yes, we did. We communicated with the residents neighborhood, and we experienced significant setback on that. So they were not in agreement providing that easement for us. So we dropped the idea.
Okay.
Lloyd.
You mentioned that currently there's around the perimeter there's a barbed wire fence.
Yes.
Will that barbed wire fence be replaced, and by what? And if not, then will it be open?
Razor wire.
Razor wire. Excuse me.
No, it will be replaced with razor wire. That's what I'm saying.
The intention is to always have a perimeter fence around the edge. It's not been determined what that material is going to be. Right now, our approach is to take the barbed wire piece off of it and try to reuse the fence that's currently there. The fence that's there has really grown into the property. So to remove it right now would be kind of impactful to the residents. So we're trying to keep it as it is right now. We have evaluated it. It's in decent shape. There's only one hole that I've seen that's been cut to allow access. Someone has made a fort on the site. But other than that, I think the rest of it's very repairable, and they got some life left to it.
Okay, thank you.
Is the fort going to stay in the SDP?
We can try to incorporate it, yeah.
Adverse possession.
Do we have any other park, Chris, in the city that's surrounded by a fence like this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Anyone else before we go to the public?
Just on process, time lapse aside, what is the purpose of doing a sketch plan independent of SB for something that's relatively straightforward as a diagram? What are we really concerned about at this point?
Well, there is some difference between what was presented to the mayor and city council 3 years ago, so we want to put this forward to make sure that everyone here is okay with what we are moving forward with the schematic development plan.
So what would those differences be, just for anybody looking in, or it's been a while? 3 years.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in that time, we've originally, is this plan still up? No. But there is a warehouse on site that we were trying to retain and use as a community center. And after much study and analysis, we determined that because it was built as a prefab building, it was made just for that warehouse purpose. The process of going forward and repurposing it just was not viable. We could not fit in what Park and Rec and Culture wanted in that facility into the existing structure. So that's part of the delay, that we had to go back, reevaluate what the actual park was. And it actually resulted, which I think is a better park system, now that we don't have to pull that vehicular circulation completely into the interior of the park. We can keep it to the periphery, and then we really gained a lot of internal space for the park design. So all the elements that were in the design previously are still there. It's just we were able to reorient them and kind of make a better circulation for the pedestrians using the space, and we no longer have that building as part of the design.
Okay. Thanks.
Will the replacement for that building, a new building, will it be similar in square footage?
There's no replacement.
There's no building.
Currently, there's no building.
replacement?
Mm-mm.
Not, okay.
That's for
Going
future.
forward. Well, it's obviously for the future, but it's got to have a footprint somewhere, so where would that be?
We do have a green space allocated for that. That was, I mentioned a green space that kids can play with right now, and it's not the size of an actual playing field, but it is large enough to accommodate a future building if that was so deemed.
So, that space is away from the residences, so it wouldn't be obtrusive?
It's located just
show
north
us?
of the parking lot. So this blue space here, primarily it's kind of located up
Let's see
here.
we're waiting for the picture.
We don't
here.
have the, we don't have the
We don't have the
sketch
image.
plan on
Here we
that.
go.
There it
Okay,
is.
so.
Okay. So it would be located somewhere up here.
All right.
Any other?
Yeah, we talked about that
Yeah.
because of the
I
idea that
think
it
I
would, be
was out
close
of
to,
town.
it would be close to the parking lot
Right.
if we ever wanted to build a future building there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, this is the time when the mayor, council, and planning commission like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to lend their testimony to this. Same rules apply, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Carl Van Est. I live at 52 Redding Ridge Drive in Gaithersburg, part of the Wesley neighborhood. I've been and looked at other plans here that they've provided, that have been provided to us, and they seem much more detailed than what I've seen today. So I don't know how we've moved back. Councilmember Spiegel, we share your comments here. We're frustrated at the pace of progress here. This money's been allocated for a long time. Things aren't moving quickly here. We'd like to see that it get done. Also, the neighbors, Wesley is an older community. We're in essence fenced out from access to this park. Our kids need to go down to Route 28 and come back around. There isn't any other way for us to get to this park. We need to get it done, and we shouldn't be fenced out. We need to look at alternatives. And in regard to talking to the neighbors on Treeworthy, it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened from Paul and I. We said that we were going to talk to our neighbors. We haven't done that, but it can also happen from the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would note that one of those property owners where that path would go through was here earlier. He didn't stay. So.
You might not have known that.
Yeah, Paul Lavinka again from the Wesley neighborhood. And I sat on the committee, and it was the ad hoc committee. It was really interesting to talk about the different ideas for the park. It was very exciting. And from Wesley, one of my main concerns was access and the fence and some of the things that apparently are no longer on the table. But both Carl and I had volunteered to go with the city to get Wesley residents potentially interested to see if someone would allow a pathway through one of their yards. I think there's maybe 14 or so potential houses along that street that could be approached. If the city went ahead without us, it'd be interesting to know what the reactions were, and we could potentially go back again. But we would offer that as an opportunity for the city to further engage that community, because we don't want to be fenced out.
Thank you, Paul.
Was tall people testimony. Melissa McKenna, Hidden Creek. It was also my honor and pleasure to serve on the ad hoc committee. It seems like ages ago. Mr. Spiegel, I do appreciate that. It was also my pleasure and honor with Michelle Potter and your former legislative aide to go up and testify before the State House for bond money. I hope that's still out there since it's been a little bit of time. And this is my favorite because I call it the no-name park. It was a great process to put together. We really came together on all of the ideas. Good luck coming up with a name, because for the few we passed around, there wasn't going to be any consensus. I think this is a great park. It's hidden, and I think one of the challenges the city is going to have is making sure it can be found. But I look forward to that challenge, and I look forward to the park hopefully very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Not seeing any. Thank you all for your testimony.
Okay. Staff recommends the Planning Commission hold its record open until 5 p.m. on Friday, December 27th, 2019, that's 25 days, with anticipated recommendation to the Mayor and City Council on Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor?
Before we get to our motion, I just have one question for Chris, and that is if there is some sort of negotiation with the Wesley neighborhood on getting an access, and if we were to approve a sketch plan, would we have to go back to the drawing board in order to accommodate a connection, or could we just move forward?
I believe we can move forward and reflect that in the schematic development plan.
Okay. In that case, staff recommends that we hold our record open until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, January 14th, with anticipated policy discussion on Monday, February 3rd. What's the pleasure of the council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Planning Commission. Again, we didn't mean it for it to go this late. Next is from the Mayor and Council. We're going to start with Council Member Sesma.
Okay, first I have an announcement. This is an announcement after a closed executive session. A closed meeting was held at City Hall by the Mayor and City Council on Monday, November 18, 2019 at approximately 9:35 p.m. pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Section 3-305B1I, the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction. The topic discussed was the performance of the city manager. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Sales, Sesma, Spiegel, and Wu. City staff present was City Manager Tom Sello. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 10:40 p.m. Just to be quick, since we've been here a while, I want to offer my congratulations to Lieutenant Campbell, Sergeant Karen, and Corporal Milano. I'm sure that they will uphold the guidance provided by our Chief Schroka. I know they've been serving on the force for a while, and it's good to see the opportunities for them to be able to realize the opportunities to advance in their career. So we have high expectations for our officers, and we have even higher expectations for the leadership of our in our police force. So I'm wishing them good luck, and thank you for doing a great job. I want to thank again the Kentlands Community Foundation. I happen to be the KCF's liaison to the City Council. So this is another contribution to our Dolores Swoyer Scholarship Fund that pays scholarships for students to attend our camp who might have the hardship of not having the family income to be able to support that. And then this new addition to the arts camps is really a cool thing, so I want to thank them for that. From November 20th to the 23rd, several of us, Lorianne, Ryan, and myself, attended the National League of Cities City Summit in San Antonio, Texas. Beautiful city. Lots of cool stuff happening there. This was a record conference in terms of attendance and participation, about 20% increase over the last year. One of the big topics that was discussed, and I'm sure each of us probably went to different sessions on this issue, was the 2020 census and how important it was for municipalities to make sure that each city got a complete count. And there were examples of undercounts that resulted in billions of dollars of lost federal income or revenue. And then each year, the officers of the National League of Cities turn over. So at this meeting, Gary, Indiana Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson handed over the gavel of the presidency for the league to Council Member Joe Buscaino from Los Angeles. He happens to represent the Port of Los Angeles, and that's his district. That's about 275,000 just in his district. So Joe's a friend. I've known him ever since he's been associated with the with the League of Cities, so I wish him good luck and happy to serve with him. Another thing that happened at the meeting was election of new board members, and Lorianne Sales was elected to a 2-year term after serving as a member of the board of directors for a year as the chair of the Community Economic Development Committee. So lots of stuff happened. I think we all brought material back to share with staff and with each other, and that's about it. I don't think I have anything else. We certainly covered a lot of territory tonight.
So we have, and we have more to cover. Rob?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much.
I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I have a formal announcement first. After a closed executive session, a closed meeting was held at City Hall by the Mayor and City Council on Monday, November 25th, 2019 at approximately 9:36 p.m. Seems early by comparison. Pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Sections 3-305B4, to consider a matter that concerns the proposal for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state, and 3-305B7 to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. The topic discussed was the Lake Forest Mall property. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Sales, Sesma, Spiegel, and Wu. City staff present were City Manager Tomasello, City Attorney Board, Deputy City Manager Enslinger, Assistant City Manager Lonergan, and Director of Planning and Code Administration Schlichting. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 10:30 p.m. Let me echo what Mike said about the National League of Cities conference in San Antonio. He gave a great summary of a really important and productive meeting that we had there. And congratulations to Lorianne for getting elected to the National Board of NLC. The night before we left for San Antonio, I made the drive up to Frostburg to have the opportunity to speak with the Allegheny-Garrett County chapter of the Maryland Municipal League in my role as president of the statewide league, and I want to thank them for their hospitality. They made the very, very long drive there and back worth it. I also want to congratulate our officers who were promoted this evening and thank them for all their service to the city, and thank their families for lending them in their service to the city and knowing that they go out there risking themselves every day for our safety. And I want to congratulate everybody who was involved in the Kentlands Lakelands 5K, the volunteers, the city staff, the KCF, and thank them for their significant donations over the years to our scholarship fund. I want to, I don't want to steal your thunder, Mr. Mayor, but I want to congratulate Quince Orchard High School football on an awesome season and great postseason this year, and wish Northwest High School great luck. For those of you who haven't been following, the loss by Quince Orchard was solely the fault of Mayor Ashman because he wasn't at their home game during the postseason for the first time in what, 16 years?
First time I missed the QO Northwest
so
game
it's
in
got
16
it's
years.
got to be his fault. No,
Well, it was the second game between QO and Northwest
that's
this
all right.
season.
Well,
so-
kidding aside, we know the mayor. You know, he holds himself responsible, but he shouldn't. But we congratulate the teams and we wish Northwest great luck. For the gentleman from the Forest Oak Cemetery Board who came to address us earlier this evening, I just want to thank him for his kind words. We really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to having discussions with his organization about what we might be able to do in that little space that he mentioned to explain the role that the city played in refurbishing the gate and the fence structure, which really does look beautiful and is a wonderful aesthetic addition to the east side of the city, one of many investments that the city government has made towards improving and beautifying the east side over the years. And that's all I've got this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Neil.
So I'll also keep it very brief. Had the privilege of attending the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce annual awards ceremony. It was the first time I've attended that event because the city has only recently become a member of the Montgomery County Chamber. We've been a member of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber, a very active member for quite some time. So it's nice to see a little bit more county-wide perspective, and many awards given to great businesses and who are doing great work, not just for their employees, but for the general community. So that was great. And I'll conclude by talking about what a great Thanksgiving I had, because I had 2 Thanksgivings this year. I had a local Thanksgiving the weekend before, and I want to give a shout out to my sister-in-law by my first wife, Lona Feldman, who was down in Bethesda, who was nice enough to throw a special Thanksgiving for those of us who are also out of town. Great to see that branch of the family. And then a special shout out to my daughter, Liz, who is a trained chef and so makes the long drive to North Carolina very worthwhile. Great hospitality, and I hope everyone out there had as good a Thanksgiving as I had, and hope you all need to go on a diet as much as I do right now. So I'm not eating for the next 3 weeks, just water. Thanks, that's it for now.
All right. I will echo all the thanks and congratulations, and note that next week we have a work session. We will receive annual briefings from the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, Gaithersburg Book Festival Committee, Multicultural Affairs Committee, and Senior Advisory Committee, and the Gaithersburg Parks, Arts, and Recreation Corporation. That is next Monday, 7:30 p.m. And then the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council is on December 16th. We'll go to from the City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just prepared to discuss the remaining agenda item when it comes up. Nothing else tonight.
Okay. And we'll go to Economic Development, Tom Lonergan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the hour, I'll keep it very brief. It's been just a couple of months since officials just across the river announced the creation of the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance, and the court achieved among 10 communities, committing them to work together as a regional economic development organization. Today, Sharon and I, along with members of the Council of Economic Development Officials, convened at the Washington Board of Trade's downtown office to discuss the alliance in greater detail and see how potentially suburban Maryland counties and communities could potentially benefit from such a collaboration. Officials from Montgomery, Prince George's, Howard, and Charles were there. The meeting was introductory, but well attended, well received, and a dialogue was pledged to continue in 2012.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Good news. Okay.
So we're not just joining the Northern Virginia Alliance? Okay.
Okay, next we're going to move on to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. And Tony, you're up.
Yes, sir. This is a resolution authorizing me to negotiate and execute a development agreement relative to the property known as Lake Forest Mall with Lake Forest Retail Investment LLC. We welcome Kevin Rogers from WRS, who introduced himself earlier. You see Mr. Petrie in the audience, Pete Henry. So we have people that can answer any questions you might have. This is a fairly concise agreement, only 7 pages, given the enormity of the project on the future of the city. But it is another step towards redevelopment of this property, which is a major priority for us. It outlines, roughly outlines, the permitted density and the potential mix. There is no plan here. We have not gotten ahead of the public process in developing a site plan, nor has WRS. The largest section of the agreement outlines public-private participation and evaluation of the site. There are other items in there. We reserve the right, obviously, to do a market analysis. And again, it's really a high view of what can happen with this site eventually. We're excited to hear that WRS has all 5 properties under contract and intends to settle this year. It seems remarkable, given how many people have tried to do that assemblage. So I think I will leave it at that and say the staff team, which I appreciate the participation of Lynn and John Schlichting and Tom Lonergan and other staff members in putting this together. We are satisfied with the document as you see, and we're happy to take any questions in anticipation of your vote.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you to all staff who worked on this. This is perhaps the most important potential project that any of us will ever oversee in the city of Gaithersburg. And it's I think we've been waiting a long time to even get to this point, and I think it's fair to summarize that what's before us tonight is a document that roughly outlines the process and some very, very general expectations, enough for WRS to go to its investors and say, hey, this is how the process would work. This is a real thing. Invest your money in us so we can acquire all these properties and move on to the next step. I think it looks good. I'm very happy with how the negotiations have gone on both sides. Well, yeah, go right ahead.
I agree with the mayor. I just have a couple of clarifying questions, if I may.
Sure.
First, I just want to clarify that the city retains all of its usual oversight authority over planning and approvals, subject to the conditions in this agreement. So, as you say, this is sort of a general outline, and there are some sort of, in section 1, general commitments with respect to percentages of use. But other than that and the other conditions in this agreement, we're not guaranteeing approval of any specific plan at this point without having had the opportunity to vet it, to have public hearings, to see it, to weigh in, to vote, and do all those things that we would normally do.
And more.
That's correct. And more. That's mostly just sort of for the benefit of the public that I make that statement, but that's true, right?
That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the only other question I had was on section 1B, small Roman numeral 1, there's a reference to 5% use for other. And I just wasn't sure what other refers to outside of the categories that had already been listed. Is there any specific set of uses in mind under other, or are we just saying we're leaving it pretty vague at this point?
We are leaving it pretty vague at this point. I think the group came to a consensus that there could be things that are not known at this point, uses, but it's really a catch-all. And anybody in the group that wants to comment, please feel free.
Lynn?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's also intended that the other uses would be permitted uses under the MXD zone.
But by definition, if we're calling them other, they're not also going to be retail or residential or uses that have been separately identified in this agreement.
Correct.
Is that
No, it was intentional that it would be something else.
Something else.
Like
Yeah.
quasi-industrial, something cool, something, exciting that's different than residential and typical retail.
Okay. And with respect to open space requirements from our our code and our zoning and all that, that still would apply.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
under the MXD.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Those are the only questions I had.
Neil?
I don't really have a question at this point. I think the agreement covered a lot of the ground we've discussed. I just want to point out for the benefit of the public that this agreement includes some very detailed requirements for a public engagement as this process goes forward. Not just meetings of the city council and mayor and planning commission, but outreach to the public and so forth. So, there will be much more to discuss as this project moves forward.
Mike, Rob?
So, the mayor said that this is the biggest thing that some of us have been involved in. I would point out that it's probably the major redevelopment project that any of us have been involved in the city. I would point out that we have Watkins Mill East and West, or what we call Parklands and Spectrum. We got the Monument properties, which is actually a redevelopment, Crown, Kentlands, Lakelands, and Rio Washingtonian. So those are pretty significant developments, but most of them were greenfield developments. And so this is something really new. And I think by virtue of our success in those projects and seeing those communities develop under the guidance of our planning staff and the councils that have been involved, I think, I would hope that WRS is looking forward to working with us, and certainly your remarks earlier, Mr. Rogers, that reputation has been an important part of how you've been able to advance your plans and your deals. So I think it's, everything in the agreement at this point are things that we've talked about, things that we're concerned about. I think as this goes forward, the public engagement is going to be really important, but the public has to understand that this isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a while. So we're going to be looking at the mall for a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm excited that we've reached this point, and I'm excited for the developer that they've obtained agreements to acquire all of the property under basically one roof. I think that's good. So looking forward to this.
Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I echo everyone's comments that looking at this document, it's a long time coming to this, and then it's an exciting process going forward. Can't wait to see what comes next. Question I've got I guess it's a Lynn question. The agreement talks about termination and breach, but doesn't articulate remedies for breach. Is that intentional? And what would be the mechanisms and remedies available if either party were to breach this agreement during its performance?
Yeah, certainly, a breach of agreement would be enforceable through the courts if there were a breach in any term, and as we stated earlier, it does not supersede any of our typical planning and zoning rights and authorities. So it really would be just to enforce those provisions that go outside of our normal process.
Okay, so there's no provision, maybe I'm thinking tort breach is for damages, attorney's fees,
yeah.
stuff like that?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
So what do we need?
Did you have a question?
I just had a technical question for Tony as I was looking at the section that I was referencing earlier that said other 5%. There was the word office and then a comma and then other 5%. I wasn't sure if the 5% was supposed to refer to office and other.
It is.
Okay, all right.
And it's a minimum.
Fine.
Okay, well, would someone like to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Next, we have from the city attorney.
Nothing further this evening.
Anything from any other staff? Okay. Then, as I mentioned, we have a work session next week. Next regular meeting of Mayor and Council is on December 16th. Winter Lights is going on. I encourage everyone to go. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.